My parents skipped my brain surgery because flights were too expensive. Then I found out they blew my $23,000 on my brother's engagement party, so I went nuclear. All right, Reddit. My parents said flights to my brain surgery were too expensive. Then I found out where my $23,000 emergency loan actually went. So I decided to teach them a lesson about respect, and it cost them everything. I, 28 male, was working as a senior accountant for a regional insurance firm in Charlotte. Decent salary, good benefits, and a girlfriend who was way better than I deserved. My girlfriend Alda worked as a project coordinator for a logistics company, and when I told her about the diagnosis, I had a tumor the size of a golf ball wedged against my frontal lobe like it owned the place. Benign, the neurosurgeon said, but that didn't make it any less terrifying when he explained the procedure. She didn't flinch, just grabbed my hand and said we'd handle it together. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday in November. 3 weeks' notice. My parents lived in Tampa after retiring there 2 years ago. My younger brother Chase, 25, lived with them, working on his startup idea, which seemed to involve a lot of talking and zero actual business. I called them the day I got the surgery date. Hey, Mom, so they scheduled the surgery, November 16th. Oh, honey, that's so soon. Are you scared? A little. But the doctor said it's routine. Well, as routine as brain surgery gets. Dad got on the line. You'll be fine, son. You're tough. Always have been. Thanks. I know it's short notice, but I wanted you guys to know. We'll try to make it work, Mom said. Let me check flights. We talked for another 10 minutes. They asked about the procedure, about recovery time, about whether I was still working. Normal parent stuff. I hung up feeling okay about it. 3 days later, Mom called back. Her voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something. Honey, I need to talk to you about something. What's up? It's your father. His medication costs have gone up again, and we had an unexpected expense with the condo. The HOA hit us with a special assessment for roof repairs. We're short about $23,000. I felt my stomach drop. That's a lot. I know. And the timing is terrible, asking right before your surgery. But we wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency. We can pay you back in a few months once your father's pension adjustment comes through. I looked at my laptop, at the medical loan paperwork I'd been reviewing. My surgery alone was going to cost me $8,000 out of pocket. But I had savings. I'd been careful with money my entire adult life, maxing out my 401k, keeping an emergency fund. I had about $35,000 liquid. When do you need it? As soon as possible. They're threatening to put a lien on the condo if we don't pay by the end of the month. Alda walked into the room. I mouthed my mom, and she rolled her eyes. Let me talk to Alda, and I'll call you back. Thank you, sweetie. You're such a good son. I told Alda about the request. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. They're asking you for 20 grand a week before you have brain surgery? It's an emergency. Your surgery is an emergency. Their HOA bill is not. They said they'll pay me back. Honey, this feels wrong. Why are they hitting you up for money right now? Why not wait until after you're recovered? Because they need it now. Or because they know you're vulnerable and more likely to say yes. I didn't want to believe that. These were my parents. They'd raised me. They were just in a tough spot. I transferred the money the next day. $23,000 straight from my savings to their account. Mom called immediately, crying with gratitude. You've always been the responsible one, she said. Not like your brother. Chase couldn't help us even if he wanted to. It's fine, Mom. Just pay me back when you can. We will. And we'll definitely try to make it to your surgery. Let me price out flights again. The call came the night before my surgery. Not ideal timing, but then again, nothing about this situation had been ideal. Honey, it's Mom. I was sitting on the couch, trying not to think about tomorrow. Alda was in the kitchen making chicken soup like that was going to fix anything. The TV was on mute. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes without processing a single thing on the screen. Hey, Mom. So, we've been talking, and we need to be honest with you about tomorrow. Here it comes. The flights are just too expensive right now. It's the holidays, and you know how crazy prices get. We're looking at $600 per ticket, and with your father's back acting up, we'd need to fly first class or he'll be in pain for weeks. That's nearly $2 grand right there, and Chase would need a ticket too. I didn't say anything, just listened. Are you there? Yeah, I'm here. You understand, right? We want to be there. You know we do. But it's just not realistic with everything going on. Dad's voice came on in the background. Must have grabbed the phone. Think about it logically, son. You're getting great care there. Best surgeons in the state, you said. What are we going to do? Sit in a waiting room? You'll be unconscious anyway. It's brain surgery, Dad. I know that. I'm not saying it's not serious. I'm saying we'd just be sitting around doing nothing while the doctors do their job. And for $2,000? That's groceries for 2 months. Groceries for 2 months? I'd just given them 20 grand 3 weeks ago. Plus, Mom chimed back in, you've got Alda there. She's practically your wife anyway, right? So you're not alone. Chase really wanted to come, Dad added. He feels terrible about this. But you know his situation. Kid's barely making rent as it is? Kid. Chase was 25. I'd had 3 jobs by the time I was 25. He said to tell you good luck, though. He's really rooting for you. How generous. Look, Mom said, her voice taking on that edge it got when she wanted you to stop making things difficult. We're going to be thinking about you every single second tomorrow. I'll have my phone on me the whole time. Alda has my number. The moment you're out of surgery, we want to hear from her. Okay? Okay. You're being awfully quiet. Just tired? Well, that's understandable. Big day tomorrow. You should get some rest. She paused. You're not upset with us, are you? Was I upset? I was having brain surgery in 14 hours, and my family was bailing because flights were expensive. The same family I'd just written a check to for their condo emergency. The same family who'd never asked if I was scared, or how I was feeling, or if I needed anything. Mom? No, Mom, I'm not upset. Good, because we really would be there if we could. You know that. I know. Chase wanted me to remind you that he's got that job interview next week. He's really nervous about it. Maybe you could give him a call after you're feeling better. Give him some tips? Chase needed career advice. From me, the guy having brain surgery. Sure, I'll see what I can do. You're such a good brother. Okay, we'll let you get some rest. We love you so much, honey. You're going to do great tomorrow. The doctors know what they're doing. It's really just routine at this point, right? Routine brain surgery. That was a new one. Yeah, Mom, routine. That's what I thought. Okay, we'll talk soon. Love you. Get some sleep. They hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the muted TV. A game show was on. Someone had just won a car. They were jumping up and down, screaming, hugging the host. Alda came in with the soup, saw my face, and set it down on the coffee table. That was them? Yeah. Let me guess. Flights are too expensive. She leaned against me. I put my arm around her. The game show switched to a commercial for car insurance. Some gecko was talking about saving 15%. Tomorrow I was having brain surgery. My family was 1,000 miles away saving money on plane tickets. And I was finally starting to see them clearly for the first time. Funny how a brain tumor can do that. Surgery day arrived cold and dark. Alda woke me up at 4 a.m. I'd been awake anyway, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the 2% chance I wouldn't wake up. You ready? Alda asked softly. No. She squeezed my hand. That's okay. I'm scared too. We drove to the hospital in silence. Her hand stayed on mine the whole drive. She'd taken the entire week off work without asking permission. Just told her boss it was happening. Check-in was a blur. Paperwork, signatures, medical history. The nurse asked who my emergency contact was. My girlfriend Alda. They prepped me in a freezing room. Alda stayed with me until the last possible second. When they came to wheel me to the OR, she leaned down and kissed my forehead. I'll be right here when you wake up, she said. I promise. I know. I love you. Love you too. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7. When I came to, everything hurt. The room was spinning. A nurse appeared and told me the surgery went well. 5 hours. The surgeon said it was one of the cleanest removals he'd done. Alda was allowed in an hour later. She looked exhausted but relieved. She grabbed my hand carefully. How are you feeling? Like someone opened my skull with a can opener. She smiled. Didn't let go of my hand. Your parents called this morning, around 10. I told them you were still in surgery. They said they'd call back later. Did they? Not yet. She stayed until visiting hours ended. Promised to be back first thing in the morning. I spent that first night drifting in and out, barely conscious. The morphine kept me floating. Nurses checked on me every 2 hours. I couldn't have told you my own name if someone asked. The second day was better. Still felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but at least I could think straight. Alda brought me real food from outside because hospital food was depressing. We watched some game show on TV with the sound off. Normal stuff. Recovery stuff. That afternoon my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. I picked it up, still moving slow. Everything taking effort. It was a photo. Chase with his arm around a girl I'd never seen before. Both of them holding glasses. Behind them, a banner that read, "Congratulations Chase and Hannah." Balloons everywhere. String lights. Looked like a country club. The message under the photo. Let this picture be the first thing you wake up to. Chase proposed. We threw him a little celebration tonight. Wish you could have been here. Hope surgery went well. Love you. I stared at that photo. Read the text again. Let this picture be the first thing you wake up to. What is it? Alda asked. I handed her the phone without saying anything. She looked at it. Her face went completely still. When was this? I checked the timestamp. 2 days ago. 2 days ago, surgery day. Yeah. She zoomed in on the photo. I watched her eyes scan the background. That's a country club. Yep. This isn't some backyard thing. This is... She kept scrolling, finding more details. There's a photographer, catering staff, professional decorations. This had to cost a lot, I finished. I've been doing the math. Country club rental. $3,000 minimum for an event space like that. Catering for what looked like 40-plus people. Another $2,000 easy. The setup. String lights, flowers, rented furniture, balloons. Another one, $1,500. Photographer, $800 to $1,000. Plus whatever ring Chase bought, which, knowing my family's need to look good, wasn't coming from a pawn shop. I was looking at an $8,000 to $10,000 party. Minimum. Alda set the phone down carefully. The HOA emergency wasn't an emergency. They used your money for this? 23 grand. Some of it went here. The rest probably went to Chase's ring. First and last month's rent for wherever they're moving. Who knows what else? But yeah, my money paid for this party. While you were in surgery. While I was in surgery. She didn't say anything for a minute. Just sat there processing. Finally, they couldn't afford plane tickets. $600 each was too much. But they could afford this. Apparently. Honey, I know. Do you? Because I'm looking at this photo and I'm seeing your parents dressed up, celebrating your brother's engagement on the same day you had brain surgery, using money you gave them. Money they told you they desperately needed for an HOA emergency. I get it, Alda. And your mom sent you this picture. She chose to send you this. She wanted you to see it. That was the part that kept hitting me. She didn't accidentally post it where I might see it. She didn't forget I was in the hospital. She actively chose to send me this photo with that message. Let this picture be the first thing you wake up to. Like Chase's engagement party was supposed to make me happy. Like I was supposed to be thrilled that my family threw a country club celebration for him on the day I was having brain surgery. With my money. I looked at Alda. They knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah, they did. They picked him. Again. Like always. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm the one who's been pretending it wasn't obvious for the last 30 years. Alda squeezed my hand. Didn't try to fix it or make me feel better. Just sat there with me while I stared at the ceiling and processed the fact that my family had spent my $23,000 on a party instead of showing up for my brain surgery. The nurse came in for the afternoon check. Asked how my pain was. 1 to 10. Manageable, I said. She adjusted my IV anyway. The physical pain dulled. But the other thing, the thing sitting cold and heavy in my chest, that stayed sharp and clear. They chose Chase. They always chose Chase. And I'd just paid them $23,000 to prove it one more time. They discharged me 5 days later. Alda picked me up, helped me into the car like I was made of glass. I had half my head wrapped in bandages, 24 staples holding my skull together, and a prescription list that read like a pharmacy inventory. Alda had cleaned the apartment, stocked the fridge, set up the bedroom so everything I needed was within reach. She'd even bought me one of those grabber tools so I wouldn't have to bend down. You didn't have to do all this, I said. Yes, I did. Someone has to actually give a darn. Mom called that evening. Chipper, upbeat, completely oblivious. How are you feeling, sweetie? Like someone cut into my skull. Oh, I'm sure it's not that bad. You've always been tough. Listen, I wanted to tell you some exciting news. Chase got engaged. I sat there on the couch, staring at the wall. Yeah, I saw. Isn't it wonderful? We threw him a little party to celebrate. Nothing too fancy, just close friends and family. I wish you could have been there. I was busy. Oh, right, your surgery. How did that go? Fine. That's great. Well, I'll let you rest. Love you. She hung up before I could respond. Alda came home from the pharmacy about 20 minutes later. What's wrong? Mom called. Wanted to tell me about Chase's engagement. Of course she did. She said they threw him a little party. Nothing too fancy. That country club looked real unfancy. I spent the next few days recovering and investigating. Turns out when you work as an accountant, you develop certain skills. Skills like knowing how to track money, how to find receipts, how to piece together financial information. I started with Chase's Instagram. He'd tagged the venue, a country club in Tampa. I looked up their event pricing. Minimum $5,000 for a private event, plus $100 per person for catering. He'd tagged 48 people in various photos. Then I checked Mom's Facebook. She'd posted photos too, more discreet but still there. One showed a close-up of Hannah's ring. I reverse image searched the style and found the jeweler, a boutique shop in Tampa that specialized in custom engagement rings. Their starting price was $3,500. I made a spreadsheet, because that's what you do when you're an accountant who's been betrayed by his family. Venue, $5,000 catering, 48 people, $4,800. Bar service, $1,200. Photography, $1,500. Decorations rentals, $800 engagement ring, $3,500. Estimated. Mom's new dress, tagged in photo, $400. Dad's new suit, tagged in photo, $350. Total, $17,550. Round it up for miscellaneous expenses, and you get right around $20,000. Close enough to the $23,000 they'd asked me for. The rest probably covered Chase's moving expenses and other costs. Alda found me at the kitchen table, laptop open, spreadsheet displayed. What are you doing? Math. She looked at the screen. Oh, they didn't have an HOA emergency. They needed money for Chase's engagement party. And they lied to my face about it. I know. You knew. I suspected. Your mom's timing was too convenient. Ask for money right before your surgery when you're vulnerable. Then claim they can't afford flights. It was manipulation 101. Why didn't you say something? I did. You didn't want to hear it. She was right. I'd been making excuses for them my entire life. What are you going to do? Alda asked. I saved the spreadsheet. I'm going to return the favor. Meaning? Meaning they showed me who they are. I should believe them. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. Screenshots of Chase's Instagram posts with timestamps. Screenshots of the venue's pricing page. Screenshots of Mom's Facebook photos, showing the date and time they were posted, all during the hours I was in surgery. Then I picked up the phone and called Mom. She answered on the second ring. Honey, how are you feeling? I want my money back. Silence. What? The $23,000. I want it back, now. Sweetie, we talked about this. We'll pay you back when Dad's pension adjustment comes through, the one that doesn't exist. I called the pension office. There is no adjustment. More silence. Then, you called his pension office? I'm an accountant, Mom. Did you think I wouldn't verify? This isn't... We can explain. I saw Chase's engagement party, the country club, the catering, the photographer. I did the math. That party cost around $20,000. The same amount you told me you needed for an emergency HOA assessment. That's not fair. We did have expenses, while I was having brain surgery. You threw Chase a $20,000 party while I was on an operating table getting my skull cut open. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. We were going to pay you back. We just wanted to do something nice for your brother. He's been going through a hard time. A hard time? He's 25 and lives with you rent-free. I had brain surgery. Don't you dare make this about... I want my money. All of it. By the end of the week, or I'm taking legal action. I hung up. Alda came home that evening to find me at the kitchen table, still holding my phone. You okay? I called my mom. Demanded the money back. And? She cried. Made excuses. Played victim. Sounds about right. They're not going to pay me back. No, they're not. So I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow. Alda sat down across from me. Good. Burn it all down. They showed up at 2 p.m. the next day. I was working from home trying to focus on spreadsheets despite the throbbing in my head. The knock was hard, aggressive, the kind of knock that says someone's ticked. I looked through the peephole. Mom, Dad, and Chase. All three of them. I opened the door but left the chain on. Take that chain off, Dad demanded immediately. No. We drove 4 hours to talk to you and you're going to hide behind a door? You drove 4 hours to yell at me. I'm good right here. Mom pushed forward. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared. How dare you accuse us of stealing from you? I didn't accuse you of anything. I stated facts. I gave you $23,000 for an HOA emergency that didn't exist. You used it for Chase's engagement party. We were going to pay you back, she screamed. When? When we could. That's not an answer. Chase stepped up, chest puffed out like he was going to do something. You're really going to ruin my life over this? Hannah's family is asking questions. Her dad wants to know where the money for the party came from. Tell him the truth. It came from your brother who was having brain surgery. You're such a jerk. And you're a freeloader who's never worked a real job in his life? His face went red. I'm starting a business. No, you're not. You're living off mom and dad while they steal from me to fund your life. Dad slammed his hand against the doorframe. That's enough. You will not talk about your brother like that. Why? Because it's true? We are your parents. You owe us respect. I gave you respect. And $23,000. You chose to lie to me. Mom was full on sobbing now. We needed that money. Chase needed that party. He was depressed. We wanted to do something nice for him while I was having brain surgery. Your surgery was fine. You're fine. I stared at her, at this woman who'd raised me, who was now standing in my hallway screaming that my brain surgery didn't matter because I'd survived it. I want my money back. You have 1 week. We don't have it, Dad said flatly. Then sell the condo. Are you insane? That's our home. Should have thought about that before you stole from me. Chase lunged forward like he was going to hit me. The chain caught him. You piece of... Back up, I said. Now. Dad grabbed Chase's arm. He's not worth it. 1 week, I repeated. Or I'm filing a lawsuit. You wouldn't dare, Mom said. Try me. We're your family. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't throw parties while you're having brain surgery. You're not family. You're just people I happen to be related to. Dad's face was purple now. If you do this, if you actually sue us, you're dead to us. You understand? Dead. Funny. I was dead to you the day of my surgery. You just didn't know if it would be permanent yet. Mom's face went white. What are you talking about? Nothing. Get off my property. They stood there for another minute, trying to intimidate me through a chained door. Finally, Dad grabbed Mom's arm and pulled her away. Chase followed, but not before spitting at my door. Real classy. I closed the door, locked it, and immediately called the lawyer. His name was Mr. Reynolds, and he'd handled the closing on our apartment 2 years ago. Straightforward guy, didn't waste time with pleasantries. So let me get this straight, he said. You gave your parents $23,000. They said it was for an HOA emergency, but they actually used it to fund your brother's engagement party? Correct. While you were having brain surgery. Also correct. And you have documentation? Receipts, screenshots, timestamps, a spreadsheet breaking down their expenses. I can prove the money was transferred, and I can prove what they spent it on. Do you have anything in writing about the loan terms? Text messages where my mom called it a loan and promised to pay me back. Also a voicemail where she mentions paying me back when my dad's pension adjustment comes through. Reynolds was quiet for a moment. This is pretty straightforward fraud. You could file a civil suit for repayment plus damages. Question is, do you want to? I want every dollar back, and I want it legally documented so they can't weasel out of it. That's doable. I'll draft a demand letter first. Give them 30 days to repay the full amount. If they don't, we file suit. Do it. One more thing. You should know. If they have any legal claim to your assets, now's the time to review that. Beneficiaries, power of attorney, any jointly held accounts. They're the secondary beneficiaries on my life insurance, after ALDA. Change that. Today. And check your bank accounts, investment accounts, everything. Make sure they don't have access to anything. Something cold settled in my stomach. You think they'd try something? I think people get weird about money, especially family. Better safe than sorry. I spent that afternoon making changes. Called my life insurance company, removed my parents and Chase as beneficiaries, changed it to ALDA as primary, and a distant relative as secondary. Someone who'd always been decent to me, never played favorites. Then I logged into my investment accounts, my 401k, my savings. Everything looked normal. No unusual activity. The demand letter went out Friday. Certified mail, signature required. Reynolds sent me a copy. It was beautiful, clinical, professional, laying out exactly what they'd done and what they owed. $23,000 plus interest calculated from the date of transfer. Total, $23,920. Reynolds had also included a line about false pretenses and fraudulent misrepresentation, legal terms that basically meant, we know you lied and we can prove it. They had until December 18th to pay. The calls started immediately. Mom, Dad, Chase, all blocked. Extended family members I barely knew started reaching out. Some supportive, some accusing me of being cruel. I ignored most of them. Monday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Hannah's voice, Chase's fiancée. Hi, this is Hannah. I know we've never met, but I wanted to reach out. Chase told me about everything that's happened, and I'm really sorry about your surgery. I didn't know about the money situation. I thought his parents paid for the engagement party as a gift. If I'd known it came from you, I would have said something. Anyway, I hope you're recovering well. I'm sorry this happened. She sounded genuine. Almost felt bad for her, getting caught up in this mess. Alda listened to the voicemail. She didn't know? Apparently not. Poor girl. She has no idea what family she's marrying into. Thanksgiving came and went. Alda and I spent it alone, ordered Chinese food, watched movies. My parents had invited us to Tampa, then uninvited us after I hired Reynolds. Fine by me. 2 weeks later, Hannah called again. Not a voicemail this time, an actual call. I almost didn't answer. Hi. I know this is weird, but I need to tell you something. I'm breaking things off with Chase. I found some texts on his phone that I think you should know about. My stomach dropped. What kind of texts? Between him and your parents. From back in October, right before your surgery. She sent me screenshots. I opened them on my laptop while she stayed on the line. Chase to Dad. Can't believe the country club is booked for next month. Might have to push the party. Dad. To Chase. Don't push it. We'll make it work. Chase. But what about the surgery? Mom said he might need help with costs. Dad. He's got insurance. He'll be fine. You only get engaged once. Your mom and I will handle the party. Chase. You sure? He's going to be ticked if he finds out. Dad. He won't find out. And if he does, he'll get over it. He always does. There were more. Texts about the caterer, the photographer, the ring. My mom telling Chase not to worry about money. My dad saying I'd understand eventually because family supports family. All dated between October 8th and October 15th, the week before my surgery. I'm sorry, Hannah said. I didn't know any of this when we got engaged. Chase told me his parents paid for everything. When I found these texts, I confronted him. He said it was complicated. That's when I started digging and found out about the loan from you. Jesus. Yeah, I can forward you the full thread if you need it for your lawyer. Yeah, please. She did. Then she was quiet for a second. For what it's worth, you deserve better than this family. Thanks. Good luck with everything. After she hung up, I just sat there staring at the messages. Alda came over and read them over my shoulder. They knew, she said. They knew you were having surgery, and they spent your money anyway. Yeah, and they told Chase you'd get over it. I called Reynolds and sent him the screenshots. He called back 20 minutes later. This is good. Really good. Shows premeditation and intent. They deliberately chose to fund the party over your medical situation. That help us. Helps show pattern of behavior and undermines any misunderstanding defense they might try. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Dad's text. He always does. Like I was some pushover who'd swallow whatever they dished out. Like my surgery was an inconvenience to their celebration plans. Turns out the tumor wasn't the only parasite in my life. December 18th came and went. No payment. No contact. Nothing. Reynolds filed the lawsuit December 20th. Civil court, suing for the $23,000 plus interest, court costs, and attorney fees. The filing was public record. My phone started ringing within hours. Relatives taking sides. Distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions. I let them all go to voicemail. My parents hired a lawyer. Some guy who looked expensive based on the fancy letterhead on the response documents. They were arguing that the money was a gift, not a loan, and therefore not subject to repayment. Reynolds tore that argument apart in his response. Attached the text messages where Mom specifically called it a loan. Attached the voicemail where she promised repayment. Attached phone records showing they'd stopped answering my calls after I confronted them about the engagement party. But here's where it got interesting. In their response, my parents claimed they'd used the money for legitimate family expenses, including supporting Chase during a difficult transitional period in his life. Reynolds highlighted that sentence and sent it to me. They just admitted the money went to Chase. That helps us? It destroys their HOA emergency story. They're contradicting their own narrative. Chase had been subpoenaed to provide financial records. His bank statements, credit card bills, receipts for the engagement party. He fought it, claimed privacy, but the judge wasn't having it. When the records came through, it was all there. The country club charge, $5,000. The caterer, $4,800. The photographer, $1,500. The ring, $3,800 from a Tampa jeweler. Reynolds added it all up. The party and ring total $15,100. Plus your parents' outfits and other expenses, you're looking at around $17,000. The rest probably went to Chase's moving expenses and other costs. So my money funded my brother's engagement. Your money funded your brother's engagement while you were having brain surgery? Yes. January came. I was back at work full-time, fully recovered from the surgery. My hair had grown back. You couldn't see the scar unless you knew where to look. Life was normal, except for the lawsuit hanging over everything. Alda and I went to court in June on a Tuesday morning. Warm and humid outside. Reynolds met us at the courthouse, professional as always, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. My parents showed up with their lawyer and Chase. Mom looked smaller somehow. Older. Dad looked angry. Chase looked scared, which was funny because he wasn't even the one being sued. Yet, the hearing took 2 hours. Reynolds presented our case. The loan, the lies, the engagement party, the timeline. He showed the Facebook post with timestamps, showed the bank transfer, showed the text messages and voicemail, showed Hannah's screenshots proving they knew about my surgery when they made the decision to spend the money. Their lawyer tried to argue it was a gift. Reynolds showed where Mom explicitly called it a loan, tried to argue it was for legitimate expenses. Reynolds showed the engagement party receipts. The judge looked tired, like he'd seen this same drama 1,000 times. "Did you tell your son the money was for an HOA emergency?" he asked my mother. She hesitated. Her lawyer whispered something. I may have mentioned the HOA situation. Was there an HOA emergency? Another hesitation. There were ongoing costs. That's not what I asked. Silence. The money was for your son's engagement party, correct? For family needs, including a $5,000 party and a $3,800 ring? Those were separate expenses, funded with the plaintiff's money. More silence. The judge ruled from the bench. Full repayment of $23,000 plus interest, court costs, and attorney fees. Total, $26,780. Payment due within 60 days. My parents left without looking at me. Chase followed them, phone in hand, probably already posting about how unfair it all was. Reynolds shook my hand. Clean win. If they don't pay, we can put a lien on their condo. Good. Alda squeezed my hand as we walked out. How do you feel? Validated. That's it? That's enough. We went out for lunch to celebrate. I ordered a burger and fries, the first meal I'd truly enjoyed in months. No headache, no nausea, no family drama hanging over me. Just peace. They didn't pay. 60 days came and went. No check, no wire transfer, nothing. Reynolds filed a lien on their Tampa condo. It was public record. Anyone searching property records could see that my parents owed their son $26,780 plus accumulating interest. My parents tried to refinance to pay off the lien. Got denied. Their credit wasn't good enough, and the lien made them too risky. August came and went. I got a message from Hannah, Chase's ex-fiancée. Just wanted you to know I broke off the engagement. Found out Chase lied about a lot of things, including his finances. He told me he had a trust fund. He doesn't. He told me he was starting a business. He's not. Anyway, I'm sorry about everything. You were right about your family. I showed Alda. She smiled. Karma's real. Apparently. September brought another attempt from my parents. Dad called. I didn't answer. He showed up at my apartment. I didn't open the door. Finally, he sent an email. Long, rambling, full of excuses and half apologies. The summary. They were in financial trouble. The lien was destroying them. Chase had moved back in after the broken engagement and wasn't contributing to expenses. They needed help. I replied with one sentence. Payment plan available through my attorney. A few weeks later, Alda and I took a vacation. First one in years. Went to the coast, spent a week doing nothing but reading and eating seafood. I didn't think about my family once. When we got back, there was a letter waiting. From Mom, handwritten. Dear son, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. We made terrible choices and we hurt you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for help. The lien is going to force us into bankruptcy. Your father's health is declining. Chase is depressed and won't leave the house. We're falling apart. If you could find it in your heart to work with us on a payment plan, we could try to fix this. Please. We're your family. Mom. I read it twice. Then I filed it with the rest of the court documents. Alda found me in the office later. What was in the letter? They want a payment plan. You going to do it? Yeah, through Reynolds. At full commercial interest rates. That's cold. That's fair. Reynolds set it up. $500 a month for 54 months, plus accruing interest. If they missed a payment, the full balance became due immediately, and the lien would be enforced. They agreed. What choice did they have? The first payment came through in July. On time, to their credit. October brought more drama. Chase got a job, an actual job, at a call center. Mom posted about it on Facebook like it was a major accomplishment. So proud of Chase for taking this step. I didn't comment. November arrived. I got a promotion at work. Senior accountant to accounting manager. Significant raise, better benefits, my own office. Alda and I went out to celebrate, just the two of us. It also marked 1 year since the surgery. I was hiking again, fully recovered, feeling strong. Alda took a photo of me at the summit, smiling. Hard to believe it's been a year, she said. Yeah, feels like a lifetime ago. You're not the same person you were. No, I'm not. December brought the final blow. My parents missed their payment. Reynolds called. They're claiming financial hardship. Want to renegotiate. Enforce the lien. You sure? Completely. The full balance became due immediately. They had 30 days to pay $24,000 or face the consequences. The lien made refinancing impossible. Their credit was shot. They couldn't pay. Eventually, after months of legal proceedings and mounting debt, the condo had to be sold to satisfy the lien and other creditors. My lien was paid first, before anyone else. I got my full $26,780. My parents moved in with Chase, who'd gotten a studio apartment with his call center money. 3 people in a studio. Couldn't have happened to nicer people. Alda and I bought a house in January with my settlement money as part of the down payment. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good neighborhood. We hosted a housewarming party, invited friends, co-workers, people who'd actually been there when it mattered. I'd survived brain surgery and survived my family's betrayal. I'd come out the other side with something they'd never have. Self-respect. The knowledge that I didn't need their approval or their presence to build a good life. Some families are better left behind. The brain surgery saved my life. The lawsuit saved my dignity. And that was worth everything. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. So I'll introduce myself before I start talking about what happened. I'm 17 years old. I celebrated my 17th birthday just a couple of months ago. I graduated from high school just a month ago and have been a straight A student all my life. I've been living with my 38-year-old mother for the last year and 10 months. She's a single mom and the head chef at one of the best Italian restaurants in our city. My parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. My parents' co-parent had me for several years, but then my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. My dad ran the trucking business that his parents had started, but he'd let his brother take over once he fell sick. Earlier, I used to alternate between living with my mom and dad every week, but after my dad's diagnosis, I had to move in with my mom full-time. I visited my dad often, but I still did miss living with him because I'd say I've always been a lot closer to my dad as compared to my mother. My mom's just always been a little too tightly wound for us to really get along, and we just constantly used to be at odds. First, it was my dad who she'd fight with all the time, and then after the divorce, it was me. She had her good moments too, though, so I didn't mind staying with her. And after my dad's diagnosis, I had no choice but to stay with her. So I made my peace with it. My mother and I in the recent past have not been on good terms, mostly because of her relationship with her new husband and how he treats me. My mother got married for a second time just 8 months ago to Mark, 32 male. She'd been dating Mark for a little over 1 year, and I only found out about it when he proposed because she'd kept their relationship well under wraps. It was the significant age gap between the two, and my dad had just been diagnosed at the time, which also didn't help, so she just kept it a secret. When he proposed, that's finally when she decided to tell us about their relationship, and at that point, I had no other choice but to be okay with it. I never liked or trusted Mark, and it was mostly because of his overly sweet behavior. He seemed to fake and insincere even when he was being nice to me. Like the vibes were just always off about him, if you catch my drift. Of course, I couldn't tell my mother that because then she'd think I was trying to discourage her from getting married on purpose or some other ridiculous thing I put up with Mark, but I didn't allow him to be my friend, and I realized I was right about him. Just 3 months after the wedding, he'd moved in with us after the wedding, and since he was a high school football coach, he'd be home a lot earlier than my mother. We'd end up spending a lot of time at home by ourselves before my mother came home. And surprisingly, he never tried to even speak to me when we were on our own. But as soon as my mother would be home, he'd turn on the charm and try to act like we were best buddies. Anyone in their right mind would be able to see right through his little act. And so was I anyway. So one day, I went to the kitchen to grab myself some food, and then I heard a creaking sound coming from my mom's bedroom. Now, I knew that my mother had a secret locker under her bed that only we knew about and kept the keys on her all the time. She had a spare set of keys as well, but those were usually with me, and I hadn't given my keys to Mark. So I realized that he must have stolen my mom's set. The locker contained all of my mother's wedding jewelry, back from when she got married to my dad, and a lot of other really expensive jewelry too. She also kept some spare bundles of cash stashed away in the locker for emergencies. She didn't trust bank lockers and preferred to keep these valuables close to herself because she felt it was considerably safer. It was a whole thing. I watched Mark take out an entire bundle of cash and put it in his pocket. I was too shocked to even move and stayed rooted to my spot. So when Mark turned around, he spotted me standing right outside the bedroom. He looked irritated for a second, and then gave me a big smile, walked towards me, and then put his arm around my shoulder while walking me to the living room couch there. He told me that my mother had asked him to bring him some cash for work emergency, and that's where he was headed with the bundle of cash. He told me that this was perfectly normal, and that I didn't need to talk to my mother about this. I was going to tell my mother about it that day as soon as she came back home. But as soon as I started the conversation, she told me she didn't want to hear it. I just sat her down in private and told her that I had something to talk to her about with regards to Mark. And as soon as I said that, she shut me down instantly. She told me that she'd seen this coming and knew this was going to happen at some point or the other. My mom thought that I was going to tell her the same old Mark is not the right guy for you. And for some reason, she believed that I was going to try and ask her to patch things up between her and my dad. I don't know why she assumed that, because I never made it seem like I thought she and my dad were good together or whatever. I was very relieved when they separated because it was better that they get divorced and force each other to remain married and traumatize me with their daily fights and arguments. I tried to tell her, but she just wouldn't hear it and yelled at me and said that if I even said a word against Mark, then she'd ground me. That pissed me off. So I decided that she could suffer for all I care, since she was clearly too taken by Mark's surface-level attractiveness to notice what a loser he was. If she wanted to believe a lie and stay delusional, then I wasn't going to stop her, especially after she'd insulted me like that. I didn't bring up the incident with Mark after that, and waited for my mother to catch on herself, which she unfortunately never did. Months passed like this, and I grew more and more distant from my mother because she was obsessed with her husband. And it was just gross, simply because it was Mark of all people. Then, about a week ago, my mother decided to sit me down and talk to me about something very important. It was the weekend, and Mark was out with his friends. So it was just my mother and I. My first thought was that there was bad news about my dad, but she told me that wasn't it, and started to beat around the bush about irrelevant things. I didn't know what she was trying to get at. And so, after some time, I got fed up with her and told that to cut to the chase already. She blurted out that she actually wanted me to leave the house now because Mark had told her that he didn't feel comfortable around me and said that I made him feel safe and unwanted. Now I knew that my mother was smitten with Mark, but even I couldn't have seen this coming because kicking your own daughter out due to your husband's insecurity over practically nothing made no sense to me. I knew that Mark was afraid of me telling my mother about the locker incident and also just generally scared that someday I'd force my mother to take her rose-colored glasses off and see him for what he truly was. But he didn't have any reason to worry, because after the way my mother had spoken to me when I tried to tell her the truth, she had made sure that I didn't say anything to her at all, beyond that point. In any case, I was so bloody done with my mom that I didn't even bother to argue with her and just said, okay, then got up and started packing. My head was pounding with anger while I was packing, and I honestly wanted to wait for Mark to come home so I could punch him in the face. But then I found my mother's spare keys to the locker and had a better idea. I snuck into my mom's room while she was watching television in the living room, grabbed her bag, took out the keys, and then took them away. I also left a note in her purse saying that if she wanted to know where her original keys were, she could talk to Mark about it to make sure that he wouldn't get away with this scot-free. After I was done packing my clothes, books, and some other miscellaneous stuff that I'd need, I walked to the living room to say goodbye to my mother. She seemed surprised because she hadn't actually expected me to pack up and leave that day itself, which is also why she'd been watching television in the living room instead of helping me. In spite of the initial shock, she got over super quickly and hugged me goodbye. There was not a single tear in her eye, and neither did she seem unhappy about the situation. It was painfully evident that none of this seemed problematic to her at all. I left the house and boarded the bus that took me to my dad's house, which happened to be far away from my mother's place. It was about 2,000 miles away in the suburbs, which is part of the reason why I used to live with my mom. My dad was still undergoing treatment and had to be in and out of the hospital frequently. He lived with his brother, who took care of him. And whenever I visit him, which is almost every week, I try to keep the conversation light and positive so he wouldn't worry too much about me. I missed him, but I also cared about him and his wealth way too much. So I had never said anything about Mark or my mother with him. Whenever he'd asked me how I was doing at home and how my mother and her new husband were treating me, I'd lied to him and tell him that it was all good. But now I couldn't do that anymore and had to tell him the truth about everything, which I did without any qualms because it was important for him to know this. I told him every single thing that had happened. When I got to talking about the events of that particular day, my dad got so mad that his ears literally went red, which was the first time I'd ever seen it happening. I was a little worried that he'd fly off the handle, and that wouldn't be good for his health. But he managed to contain himself just to pacify him. I also told him how I'd taken the keys and the note that I had left, which would ensure that my mother found out about Mark's thieving. That seemed to make him feel slightly better. And he told me that I was clever for doing that. My dad and my uncle then told me not to worry about anything and said that they were perfectly fine with taking care of me. The one and only reason they'd even agreed to let me move in with my mom full-time was because they thought it would be easier and more convenient for me. But if this was the case, then they'd happily take me back. I was also much happier with my dad and my uncle, so I didn't really mind that my mother had sent me away. On the first day, I didn't hear back from my mother at all, and neither did my father. But the very next day, my mother sent me a video of Mom sobbing and apologizing to me for whatever had happened. He was begging me to come back because he'd realized that he'd screwed up by stealing from the woman who'd put her heart and soul into the relationship. My mother texted me saying that this video was supposed to be proof that Mark did feel guilty about whatever he had done and for forcing her to kick me out. My plan had worked, and when she'd noticed the missing keys and the note, she'd confronted Mark about it, and he'd been left with no choice but to come out with the truth. It was satisfying to see him crying. But when my mother sent me another text saying that she'd only forgive him if I came back, it stopped being fun and just got exasperating. She should have known that there was no way I was going back to that hell where I was being treated like I was invisible all the time. I was either invisible or being treated like a burden. And neither of those two choices seemed like something anyone would want to pick from. And for my mother to even leave, the choice to me was ridiculous, because it should have been her choice to end that marriage and apologize to me for what she did. If Mark was the bad guy here, so was she. And probably even worse than Mark, because at least he wasn't related to me. She, being my mom, had kicked me out for another man, and that was unforgivable. It wasn't just Mark who should have been apologizing, but she should also have been regretting what she put me through. Instead, she was treating this as some sort of sick game. I didn't understand why she'd left the fate of her marriage up to me to be decided. But since she had left it up to me, I chose to say that I wasn't going to come back. And she had to leave. Mark. In response to that, she sent me another video of a much calmer but still upset-looking Mark, saying that he understood where I was coming from. But he loved my mom and just needed one last opportunity to prove it to us. He sounded like he was on the verge of tears and was going to stop begging me on his knees any moment now. And that made me feel bad, but I still wasn't convinced. So I said that my decision was final to that. My mother finally replied, saying that I was being way too harsh on both of them. Here, with two grown adults trying to get me to forgive them and even putting their happiness and marriage at stake for my sake. But I didn't care about any of that, and only wanted to push them even further away. I didn't know what to say to her, so I just ignored her text and didn't reply. It's been 6 days since then, and every day she's been texting me and trying to get me back. And every single day there's a video message from her and Mark where they apologize to me for treating me badly. She's told me repeatedly in the videos that unless I agree to come back, she'll file for divorce to prove to me that she's serious. Yesterday, she even told me that she'd been speaking to a lawyer and sent me texts to prove that it was true. Mark also looked upset in the video message they sent and begged me to forgive him because he couldn't afford to lose a woman like my mother. I know that I'm destroying their marriage, but to be honest, I feel like whatever my mother is doing is really sick, and I can't bring myself to dignify it with a response of any kind. Not only is she torturing her own husband, but she's also putting me through something very unnecessary because I don't think I'm the one who needs to make a call about what to do in a situation like this. She shouldn't be putting the responsibility of deciding with regards to her marriage on my shoulders in the first place. Does that makes me look like the reason their marriage had to end? Because her daughter wasn't happy about her marriage so far? I think everyone knows that that's not the case. And I'd hate to feel guilty like that, but she's just putting me on the spot, so it's not like I have a way out of this. Anyway, Mark's not a good guy, but he's still a human being, and it's crazy that he's allowing himself to be treated this way at all. Just because my mother's richer than him, it's dehumanizing, and I can't believe he's just letting her do this to him every day. I haven't told my dad about it because I don't want him to worry about me, and I know if I tell him, he'll definitely intervene, and that'll be another dramatic showdown that I don't want him to take on. I feel terrible, but I don't know what to do here. Am I the a-hole for refusing to decide whether my mother should divorce her failing husband? Update 1. Hey guys. So I read the comments on my original post, and the general consensus was that I should tell my dad about what I was going. So instead of trying to deal with all my problems myself, I guess it's true because I do tend to take it all on myself, instead of speaking up and asking for help when I need help. I feel bad telling my dad because I think it might be bothersome for him since he has so much on his plate already. I mean, he's a literal cancer patient. So it's not easy for me to go to him with my problems the way I used to before his diagnosis. I think if I just tried to talk to him, then maybe I wouldn't have had to go through so much because he wouldn't have allowed it at all. Like this time, I finally told my dad all about my mother and her sick techniques, and he called her up and tore into her. She tried to tell my dad that this was none of his business, but he wasn't having it, and told her that he'd be filing for full custody and that he'd make sure she doesn't ever get to see me after this. She was protesting against it, but both my dad and I knew that she didn't really care about me. She cared more about what other people would think of her when they found out that she'd lost custody of her only daughter because she decided to put her husband over her daughter. That's why she was fighting with my dad over me, not because she loved me. If she loved me, she would have been a better mother. And that was something she'd never even tried to be. Now it was just too late. After the phone call with my mom, my dad explained to me the same things that people in the comments had told me, that I was his daughter and that I didn't need to think twice before coming to him with a problem. Because as a father, he could never think of me as a burden. My well-being was his responsibility, and his cancer wasn't going to prevent him from giving me the best life and solving my problems whenever he needed to step in. And I needed to remember that. I won't lie. I teared up at that point because it just reminded me that even though he was a lot weaker than I remembered, he was still my strong dad underneath. I ended up breaking down because after a long time, I finally felt that I was safe and loved again, thanks to my mother and Mark. I completely forgotten how that feeling was. But my dad reminded me again that no sickness in the world was going to stop him from protecting me. And I'll always be grateful for that. Gosh, it sounds so sappy, but I'm really happy that it's true for me. Update 2. My dad has filed for full custody of me, and my mom isn't going to get any visitation rights either. It doesn't really matter since I'm just 1 year away from being a legal adult anyway. But my dad said that he just doesn't trust my mother anymore, because her head has obviously been turned by Mark's presence in her life. Recently, she texted me to tell me that I disappointed her by dragging my dad into this, even though I knew he was sick, and called me a selfish and manipulative brat. She also added that she was really happy now that she hadn't actually divorced Mark over what I said. I was accused of trying to drive a wedge between them because that's the kind of petty person I was, but I failed. And she and Mark were now stronger than ever. She would gladly give up custody of me because I don't deserve to be her daughter anyway. There were a couple of other really mean things she said, but I don't care. She can say whatever she wants, but it won't change the fact that she's the one who failed as a mother. And the reason she's getting so defensive now is because she knows that my maternal grandparents have threatened to cut her off. But she doesn't even care about that. She's that crazy about Mark. I mean, I don't even know what to say about this woman. I've had my differences with my mother growing up, but this is just insane. She's beyond help, if you ask me. At least my grandparents have tried to knock some sense into their daughter, but even that's not working. And if her own parents can't bring her back to her senses, then we're definitely not going to be able to accomplish that. My dad's been kind enough to allow her parents to still see me because they've never done anything wrong. I just wish she'd been able to take a leaf out of that book and learn how to have a good relationship with your ex, even after divorce. Because even my grandparents are divorced, and despite that, they've done their best to raise my mom to be a strong, successful woman. Now she's almost in her 40s, so they can't be held responsible for whatever she's up to now. Unfortunately, my mother failed on all fronts as a wife, as a mother, and even as a daughter. Update 3. Hey everyone. It was a really bittersweet day today. My mother finally terminated her parents' rights over me, and I'm legally free from her now. I decided to accompany my father for the signing and saw her again today, probably for the last time in a while. She didn't acknowledge my existence at all and didn't even look at me. I didn't know how to feel very honestly, and I still don't. Like, I'm sad, but I'm also relieved, I guess. I don't know, I just have mixed feelings about all of this. Mark wasn't there, which was no big surprise, because that thief probably didn't have the spine to face me after whatever happened. It was only my mother's actions that really hurt me anyway. He can go to hell because he's very irrelevant in my life. My dad and uncle took me out for dinner to make me feel better today, and that did cheer me up a little. 2 days ago, he also learned that my dad is getting better. And slowly but surely, there's definitely a real chance of him beating cancer. So if everyone could just pray for that, that'd be great. I love my dad, and at this point he's my only parent, so I can't lose him. I just can't. My uncle's great, but he's not my dad, and nobody will ever be like him. Ever. I don't know how much time I have with him, but I just hope that whatever time we have together is only good times and nothing else. Nevertheless, I hope you guys keep us in your prayers, and thank you to all of you who responded. Update 4. Hello, everyone. It's been a turbulent few weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened. As always, your support has been a pillar for me during these trying times. So here's the latest chapter in my ongoing story. After the last update, where I left my mother's house and moved in full-time with my dad, things started to stabilize, at least for a little while. My dad's health showed some improvement, which gave us both a much-needed morale boost. We spent a lot of quality time together, catching up on all the small things we missed during the years I lived with my mom, and I felt a sense of peace and belonging that had been absent for too long. However, just as I was settling into this new life, an unexpected twist came our way. My mother, after weeks of silence following the custody changes and my refusal to mediate her relationship with Mark, reached out to me directly. This time, it wasn't through tear-filled videos or manipulative messages. She showed up at my dad's place, unannounced and alone. Seeing her after everything that had happened was jarring. She looked worn and much older than I remembered from just a few weeks ago. She didn't come to plead or argue this time. Instead, she came to apologize. She told us that she had left Mark. After a lot of soul-searching and therapy, she realized how deeply her actions had hurt me and jeopardized our relationship. It was a lot to process. Part of me wanted to shut the door in her face, to tell her it was too late for apologies. But seeing her there, genuinely remorseful, made my resolve waver. We talked for a long time that day. She didn't ask to come back into my life fully or undo the past. She just wanted to apologize and to tell me she was getting help to become better, not just for her but for us. My dad, who's always been more forgiving, encouraged me to consider what I wanted from this interaction. Did I want to hold on to the anger and bitterness? Or could I find it within myself to forgive, not forget, and possibly rebuild something new from the remnants of our old relationship? It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. I've decided to take it slow. We agreed that my mother would start by joining us for dinner once every month. These visits would be casual, with my dad present to provide support. We all agreed that any sign of regression on her part would mean reevaluating this decision. In these past few weeks, she's been true to her word. She's been attending therapy regularly and has even started working at a new job, trying to rebuild her life from the ground up. It's strange and somewhat surreal to see this change in her. There's a part of me that's cautiously optimistic, hoping that maybe, just maybe, we can salvage a relationship out of this mess. Outside of the family drama, life has been looking up in other areas too. I've started applying to colleges, and am excited about the prospect of studying computer science. My grades and extracurricular activities have garnered interest from several good universities, and I'm hopeful about getting scholarship offers. My relationship with my dad remains my rock. His health is still a concern, but every day he shows incredible strength and optimism, which inspires me. We've grown even closer, if that was possible, and I cherish every moment we spend together. Reflecting on everything, I realize how complex life can be, filled with unexpected challenges, but also opportunities for growth and forgiveness. While I'm wary of what the future might hold regarding my relationship with my mom, I'm learning to navigate these waters with a new perspective, one that's a little more understanding and a lot more hopeful. Thank you all for sticking with me through this journey. Your advice and support have been invaluable, and I promise to keep updating as we go along. Here's to hoping for more positive developments in the future. Update 5. Hello, everyone. I'm back with another update on the whirlwind that has been my life. Thanks to everyone who's been following along and offering words of encouragement and advice. Your support means the world to me, especially during such transformative times. Since the last update, where I cautiously reopened communication with my mother, there have been significant developments both in our relationship and in other areas of my life. Let's dive into what's been happening. The monthly dinners with my mother have continued, and to my surprise, they have been going remarkably well. Each meeting has been less awkward than the last, and it feels like we're gradually finding a new rhythm in our relationship. She's remained consistent with her therapy and has made evident efforts to change her behavior and make amends. Witnessing her genuine attempts to improve herself has softened some of the hardened edges of my resentment. While I'm still cautious, I'm also curious and somewhat hopeful about where this new path might lead us. On a very positive note, my college applications have borne fruit. I received acceptance letters from several universities, including a few with generous scholarship offers. After much deliberation, I've decided to attend a college that's renowned for its computer science program. It's far enough to foster independence, but close enough to visit home if I need to. This balance feels right, and I'm excited about the new academic and social experiences that await. As for my dad, his health has stabilized, and while he's not out of the woods yet, every small improvement feels like a huge victory. We celebrated together when I told him about my college decision, and it was one of those perfect moments filled with hope and joy. He's proud of me, and I'm just as proud of him for his resilience and unwavering support. However, not all has been smooth sailing. Recently, a new challenge presented itself. My mother, feeling more confident in her progress and our slowly rebuilding relationship, expressed a desire to be more involved in my life, including wanting to play a more active role in my transition to college. This request brought back a flood of old feelings: wariness, doubt, and a fear of reverting to our old dynamics. I shared these feelings with my dad, and after a long discussion, he encouraged me to set boundaries that I felt comfortable with. He reminded me that forgiveness does not mean forgetting the past or letting go of my comfort for the sake of others. Taking this to heart, I had a candid conversation with my mother about my feelings and boundaries. I explained that while I appreciated her changes and efforts, I needed to take things at my own pace. Surprisingly, she took it well and agreed to respect my wishes, reaffirming her commitment to rebuilding trust, however long it might take. Reflecting on all of this, I'm learning that life is a series of adjustments and growth. It's about finding balance, setting boundaries, and opening up to new chapters while closing others with grace. I'm learning to navigate these complexities, taking it one step at a time. As I prepare for college, I feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness about the future, but I'm also grounded in the knowledge that I have a strong support system in my dad, and potentially, if things continue to improve, in my mother as well. Thank you all for being part of my journey. Your insights and shared experiences have not just guided me, but have also shown me the strength of community in navigating life's ups and downs. I will continue to update as I embark on my college journey and the next chapter of my life. Here's to new beginnings and continued healing. My sister flooded the house. My mill gave us, after we refused to hand it over to her, then posted online that it was karma. She expected sympathy. Instead, cameras caught everything, and she walked out of court owing thousands and banned for life. Hey Reddit, my family has always treated my sister like royalty and me like the built-in backup plan. I finally drew a line, built my own life, and thought I was free. Turns out, they had other ideas. Before we get there, let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Kyle, and I married Daisy 8 months ago. Her family comes from old money. Her mother Victoria makes million-dollar decisions before lunch and never needs to raise her voice. My family is solidly middle class. Dad Frank works in insurance sales, Mom Linda is a school secretary, and my younger sister Jenna never faced consequences for anything. I was the one who got good grades and worked my way through college. Jenna was the fun one. I work as a commercial real estate appraiser. Good money, steady work, built my career from scratch. When Daisy and I got engaged, Victoria treated me like family immediately. No tests, no proving myself. Just respect from day one. The wedding was at Victoria's estate. About 100 guests. Everything we wanted. During the reception, Victoria pulled us aside and handed us keys and an envelope. Inside were documents for a Victorian house in the historic district. 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, stained glass windows, wraparound porch. The kind of place worth about $680,000 that you dream about but never think you'll actually get. I tried to refuse. Victoria shut that down immediately. Every couple needs a proper home to start their marriage. The property stays within the family trust, but you have full lifetime use rights and control. Think of it as yours in every way that matters. Consider it an investment in your future. Daisy and I had been saving for 4 years just to afford a down payment on some basic starter house. This changed everything. My parents seemed genuinely happy at the reception. Mom kept gushing about how blessed we were. Dad shook Victoria's hand so many times it got awkward. Jenna was maid of honor and seemed excited, though she asked way too many specific questions about property values and square footage. For 2 weeks, life was perfect. We honeymooned in Greece, came home to our house that Victoria had professionally cleaned and partially furnished. We spent evenings planning our future, talking about kids someday, all the normal newlywed stuff. Then Mom called. We need to talk. Your father and I are coming over. We're bringing Jenna. That tone. I knew immediately something was wrong. When? I asked. Tonight. We'll be there in an hour. They showed up like they were walking into an intervention. All 3 of them. Weird energy. Like they'd rehearsed something. Frank sat down heavily. We've been thinking about your situation here. What situation? Jenna jumped in. This house. She gestured around like she was already measuring for furniture. It's really nice. Really, really nice. Thanks, Daisy said flatly. Linda leaned forward with that concerned mother look I recognized from childhood. Jenna's lease is up next month, and she's having trouble finding something she can afford. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was headed. The thing is, Frank continued, Jenna really needs a place to live, and you two have this big house. It seems like the obvious solution. Daisy spoke before I could. We can help her look for an apartment, but this is our home. Jenna's eyes went cold. See? That's exactly the attitude. Some people get everything handed to them and suddenly think they're better than everyone. I felt my jaw tighten. Jenna, you're out of line. Linda cut me off. Give this house to your sister immediately. She needs it more than you selfish people do. Some ungrateful people just don't deserve nice things from others. The words hit like a punch to the gut. For a second, I felt it. That old conditioning. The voice in my head that said, be reasonable. That said family comes first. That said maybe they had a point. I'd spent my whole childhood being the responsible one. The one who made sacrifices. The one who did the right thing. And for just a moment, I almost apologized. Then I looked at Daisy, saw the disbelief in her eyes, remembered Victoria's kindness, thought about the home we'd been building together. I actually laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. You're serious right now? Frank nodded like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. Real family members help each other out. Jenna's struggling, and you're sitting pretty in a house you didn't even work for. Jenna smirked. Stop being a nuisance and just do as we say. It's not like you earned this. Your rich mother-in-law handed it to you on a silver platter. Daisy stood up. With all due respect, which at this point is none, my mother gave this house to us. Not to you, not to your daughter. To us, as a wedding gift, which means it's not up for discussion. Linda's face went red. So now you think you're too good for family? No, I said calmly. I think you're delusional if you believe we're handing over a $680,000 house because Jenna can't be bothered to work full-time. She works hard, Frank snapped. She works part-time at a boutique by choice, I shot back. She turned down a management position last month because it would interfere with her social life. Don't you dare judge my choices, Jenna said. I'm not judging. I'm stating facts. You don't get to coast through life and then demand I solve your problems. For 2 hours, they kept pushing. Every manipulation tactic in the book. Accusations of selfishness, threats to cut contact, reminders of every sacrifice they'd supposedly made for me. Jenna sat there with that entitled expression, occasionally adding comments about how she'd redecorate. Finally, Daisy had enough. Get out. Linda looked shocked. Excuse me? You heard her, I said. Get out of our house. Now. Frank started to argue. Daisy walked to the door and opened it. Leave. Before I call the police and have you escorted off property that doesn't belong to you. Jenna actually laughed. Fine. But don't come crying to us when your fancy new family gets tired of you and kicks you to the curb. That was the last straw. I stood up and looked at all three of them. Let me make something crystal clear. You will never step foot in this house again. You will never contact us about this house again. And if you try, you'll find out exactly how fast I can make your lives very uncomfortable. Now get out. After they left, Daisy looked at me. You okay? Yeah, I said. But this isn't over. She nodded. I know. And they launched a full harassment campaign within 24 hours. Calls before 7 in the morning, texts past midnight, guilt trips nonstop. Linda sent messages about Jenna, crying herself to sleep. Frank warned I was choosing consequences. And Jenna spammed screenshots of overpriced studios with captions about suffering while I lived in a mansion. Social media turned into a battlefield. Jenna posted quotes about fake family, photos of cramped apartments, polls about whether money changes people. Her friends piled on. At church, Linda painted herself as the devastated mother with an ungrateful son. Frank visited my office twice, trying to convince my boss I was unstable. They twisted everything, claiming I'd married for money, forgotten my roots, abandoned my sister. Not a word about demanding my house or calling us selfish. Daisy stayed calm. They're escalating. Document everything. So we built a folder. Screenshots, voicemails, texts, posts. The pattern was undeniable. Then the extended family joined in. Denise called crying about how I'd changed. Greg left angry voicemails. Cousins I barely knew lectured me about morality. Every conversation followed the same script. Disappointment, guilt, then anger when I wouldn't cave. The breaking point came 2 weeks in, when Jenna marched into my workplace like she owned the building. We need to talk, she announced, voice carrying across the open floor plan. Jenna, this is my workplace. You need to leave. Oh, so now you're too important to talk to your own sister? She crossed her arms and planted herself in one of the waiting chairs. Fine, I'll sit here until you're ready to have an adult conversation. My boss walked out of his office looking concerned. Everything all right here? Jenna jumped in before I could respond. Actually, I was hoping to speak with you about my brother's situation. He's been having some family issues that are affecting his judgment. I felt my stomach drop. Jenna, leave now. Did you know his new family gave him a house worth almost $700,000? She said it loud enough for everyone in the office to hear clearly. Just handed it to him like it was nothing. And now he's refusing to help his own sister who's about to be homeless because he thinks he's too good for the family that raised him. I'm worried about his mental state. I could see my coworkers pretending not to stare. See the receptionist's eyes go wide. See clients in the waiting area exchanging uncomfortable glances. My professional reputation was being destroyed in real time. My boss cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a place of business, not appropriate for family discussions. Jenna's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing pure calculation underneath the concerned sister act. Of course. Everyone always takes his side. Poor little golden boy Kyle, who can do no wrong. I hope you're proud of yourself, big brother. I hope it's worth it. She left. The office stayed silent for about 10 seconds. Then the whispers started. I spent the rest of the day fielding awkward questions and trying to salvage what I could. My boss pulled me aside at 4. Kyle, I understand family situations can be complicated and messy, but you need to keep your personal life from affecting the workplace environment going forward. If this happens again, we'll need to have a much more serious conversation about your position here. It was a warning, a direct professional consequence for something that wasn't even my fault, orchestrated entirely by my sister's manipulation. When I got home that evening, Daisy was waiting in the kitchen. She took one look at my face and knew. They came to my workplace, I told her. Jenna showed up during business hours and told my boss and half my office that I got handed almost $700,000 and won't help my own sister. Made me look like some entitled rich kid who abandoned his family. My boss warned me about keeping personal issues out of the office. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. And you know what the worst part is? For about 5 seconds after she left, after everyone was staring at me, I wondered if they were right, if maybe I was being selfish, if maybe I should just let Jenna move in temporarily and end all this chaos. Daisy sat across from me and was quiet for a long moment. And what did you decide? I looked at her. I decided they had their chance to be happy for us. They could have celebrated our wedding, our house, our future together. They chose to be resentful instead. They chose to make demands. They chose to launch this campaign of harassment. That's on them, not us. They made their choice. She nodded slowly. You're absolutely sure? Because once we involve my mother, once we escalate back, there's no going back. This becomes a war. I'm sure. I stood up. I'm done being the reasonable one. I'm done trying to make peace with people who see my happiness as their opportunity. Call your mother. That Saturday, Linda called sounding distressed. Your father's been having stress headaches. The doctor says he needs to reduce stress. And you know what's been weighing on his mind? Classic manipulation. If Dad's stressed, that's between him and his doctor. He needs his son to stop being selfish and help his family. Do you want your father to make himself sick over this? It worked enough that I agreed to meet them for dinner. Daisy said she was coming with me. Not negotiable. The dinner was at their house. When we walked in, it was an ambush. Mom, Dad, Jenna, and even Jenna's friend Taylor were there, all looking at us with expressions ranging from disappointment to hostility. We've been thinking about a compromise, Frank began. He had that reasonable tone he used when he was about to say something completely unreasonable. A practical solution that benefits everyone. I'm listening, I said. What if Jenna moved in with you? Linda asked, her voice already cracking with emotion. Just temporarily until she gets back on her feet. We're not asking for charity, just family helping family through a rough patch. Jenna jumped in with that entitled edge. I could take the third bedroom. I wouldn't be in your way. I'd even help with utilities. Though honestly, with a house that size, you probably wouldn't even notice I was there. Daisy laughed. It was sharp, cold. No. Everyone looked at her. Let me be clearer, Daisy continued. Absolutely not. Not temporarily, not permanently, not ever. That house was a gift from my mother to us. Not to your entitled daughter who thinks the world owes her something. Linda's face went red. Her voice went higher. How dare you speak about my daughter that way? After everything we've done for this family, after all the sacrifices we've made. Sacrifices? I cut in. What sacrifices? Being decent parents? That's called doing your job. Frank cut in with that cold, logic voice. Let's look at this objectively. You have 3 bedrooms. 2 people. That's inefficient use of space. Jenna needs housing. The math is simple. The moral choice is obvious. Jenna smirked. Plus, let's be real. It's not like you two earned that house. Your mommy gave it to you because she's loaded. Some of us actually have to work for what we get. You're right, I said calmly. Then why don't you work hard enough to get your own place? The room went silent. Frank found his voice. This is exactly the problem. You both think you're better than us. Superior because you have money now. Linda was crying now, the full martyrdom display. I can't believe my own son would let his wife disrespect us like this. After everything we sacrificed to raise you right, Daisy leaned forward. Her voice was quiet and controlled. You don't get to insult my husband and ask for his house in the same breath. That's not how respect works. That's not how family works. And frankly, you've shown us exactly what kind of family you are. Jenna stood up. You know what? You're both selfish. You got lucky and now you think you deserve it. We don't think we deserve it, I said. We're just not stupid enough to give it away because you threw a tantrum. Linda started crying harder. I can't believe my own son would choose money over family. I stood up slowly. Let me make something very clear. I didn't choose money. I chose my wife. I chose my marriage. I chose the life we're building together. You're the ones who decided that wasn't good enough. You're the ones who made demands instead of offering congratulations. You're the ones who weaponized family against respect. I looked at each of them. Here's what happens next. If you keep pushing, you'll find out that boundaries aren't suggestions. They're consequences waiting to happen. That's the only choice I'm giving you. We left after that. Daisy drove because I was too angry to focus. The ride home was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Then Daisy spoke. They're not going to stop. I know. They're going to keep escalating until something breaks. You're ready for that? Yeah, I said. I'm ready. My cousin Rachel called. I need to tell you something about Jenna. She's been telling people she's moving into a house next month. Not that she's hoping to, that she's definitely getting it. She's even been using your address for mail and contacted contractors about renovations. My blood went cold. You're sure? Positive. She showed me pictures of your house and said it was going to be hers. She's also been telling potential roommates they can move in by next month. She's charging them deposits. Jesus Christ. That's not even the worst part. Your parents have been in on it from the beginning. They were planning to move in too. Frank was talking about early retirement. Linda wanted to quit her job. They saw your marriage as their ticket out. I hung up and told Daisy everything. Her expression went ice cold. I'm calling my mother. Right now. Victoria arrived 2 hours later. We laid out everything. The demands, the harassment, the workplace ambush, Jenna collecting deposits from roommates for a house she didn't own. Victoria listened in complete silence. When we finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So your family believes they have some claim to property I own? Apparently, I said. How interesting. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Yes, this is Victoria Coleman. I need to schedule lunch at Willowbrook. Tomorrow. Guest list will be Mr. Frank Cooper, Mrs. Linda Cooper, and their daughter Jenna. Yes, as my guests. Thank you. She hung up and looked at us. I'm handling this. Both of you will be there to witness it, but I'll do the talking. The country club had leather chairs, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings. Linda had dressed up. Frank looked uncomfortable in a tie. Jenna looked excited. Victoria was the perfect hostess. Ordered drinks, made small talk, complimented Linda's outfit. Then she got to business. I understand there's been some confusion about the house I gifted to Kyle and Daisy. Linda's fork paused. Oh, well, we were just discussing family helping family. Of course, family is important. That's why I wanted to clear things up personally. Jenna leaned forward. Mrs. Coleman, I hope Kyle explained I'm in a tough spot. That house has 3 bedrooms, and there's only 2 of them. Victoria smiled. How thoughtful of you to be concerned about space efficiency. Tell me about your current situation. Jenna explained about her studio apartment, how expensive it was, how the lease was ending. I see. And your profession? I work at a boutique downtown. Very exclusive. Full-time? Jenna's face went pink. Part-time currently, but you turned down a management position there recently, correct? The temperature dropped. Jenna shot me a look. Victoria continued smoothly. Kyle tells me many things. We've become quite close. He also mentioned you believe you should have the house I gifted to him and Daisy for their wedding. Dead silence. Frank cleared his throat. Mrs. Coleman, there might be some misunderstanding. I don't think so. You believe that because I gave my daughter and son-in-law a house, your daughter somehow deserves it instead. Linda's face went red. We just thought since Jenna's struggling. Victoria set down her fork with precision. Your daughter works part-time by choice, turned down a promotion, and has been collecting deposits from potential roommates for a house she doesn't own. Jenna went white. How did you really think you could make claims on property I own without me finding out? Victoria opened a folder and pulled out documents. Let me explain something. While I gifted the house to Kyle and Daisy, it remains under family trust oversight. They have full rights to live there, but certain protections exist. She spread papers across the table. This is the trust documentation. This is the deed with provisions. And this is a cease and desist letter from my attorney to Jenna, demanding she stop representing herself as having any claim to the property. Jenna's mouth opened and closed. Furthermore, Victoria continued, after we heard you'd been on the property speaking to contractors about unauthorized work, I installed security cameras. You came back, multiple times. The footage is quite clear. Frank found his voice. You can't do this. I can do exactly this, and I will. Victoria leaned back. Let me be very clear. The house stays with Kyle and Daisy. Jenna will not be moving in, visiting, or having any contact with the property. Any further harassment will result in restraining orders. Linda started crying. You don't understand what it's like. I understand perfectly. You raised a daughter who believes she's entitled to things she hasn't earned. And when my family wouldn't enable that delusion, you launched a harassment campaign. That ends now. She stood up. Lunch is over. I suggest you use this time to reflect on what family actually means. As we walked out, Jenna hissed, This is all Kyle's fault. Victoria stopped. Without turning around, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, No, dear, you did this to yourselves. For 2 weeks after the country club takedown, things were quiet. Too quiet. I thought maybe Victoria's dismantling had worked. It started with a new wave of family calls, but the tone had shifted. These weren't guilt trips anymore. These were threats barely disguised as concern. Uncle Greg called saying I'd made a serious mistake embarrassing my parents in public at that club, and that some mistakes can't be taken back. Aunt Denise called crying about how the family would never forgive us for what we'd done, how we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Cousins I hadn't spoken to since high school suddenly had very strong opinions about respecting your elders and honoring family loyalty above all else. The messages got darker, more aggressive, less about Jenna needing help and more about us needing to face consequences. Then Frank showed up at my office again. This time he didn't try to get inside or talk to my boss. He waited in the parking lot until I came out at the end of the day, just standing there next to his car, watching the entrance. Kyle, he said when he saw me, we need to talk about what happened at that club. There's nothing to discuss, I said, keeping my distance. Victoria made everything very clear. You turned your mother-in-law against us, made us look like fools in front of those people, made your mother cry in public. That has consequences. The only consequences here are the ones you people earned yourselves, I said. Now get off this property before I call security. He left without another word. That night, Daisy showed me Jenna's latest social media activity. She'd posted a poll about family members abandoning struggling relatives. The comments agreed that karma catches up. The follow-up comment bothered me. Sometimes karma needs a little push. Sometimes people need to be reminded what really matters in life. Then my cousin Rachel called with information that turned my blood cold. You need to know what Jenna's been saying, Rachel told me, her voice urgent. She's telling people she already has roommates lined up for next month. She's been showing people photos of your house and saying it's going to be hers. She's collected deposits from at least 3 people. She's still collecting money, even after the cease and desist letter. Not just collecting money. She's telling people it's a done deal, that you and Daisy are going to come around eventually, or that something's going to happen that changes the situation in her favor. She keeps talking about karma and reality checks, and how sometimes bad things have to happen before people learn important lessons. What the hell does that mean? I don't know, Rachel said. But Kyle, she sounds completely unhinged. Like she's genuinely convinced herself this house is already hers somehow. Like she's just waiting for something specific to happen. It's creepy. After I hung up, I told Daisy everything. She called Victoria immediately. We need to increase security, Victoria said. I'm having my team install additional cameras tomorrow. Every angle, every entrance. And I'm arranging for regular drive-bys. If your sister comes near that property again, I want evidence. You really think they'll actually try something? I asked. I think desperate people do unpredictable things. Better to be prepared. For 3 more weeks, nothing happened. The security drive-bys showed no unusual activity. The cameras caught nothing beyond neighbors walking dogs and delivery drivers. Work went back to normal. Life settled into a routine. We almost let ourselves relax. almost convinced ourselves the worst was over. Then Daisy's father called with an invitation to his cabin upstate for a long weekend, a chance to decompress and get away from the family drama. We left on a Friday evening. The house was locked up tight, security system armed, cameras recording. We'd be back Sunday evening. Everything would be fine. We got back Sunday evening around 8. The street was quiet, normal. Everything looked fine from outside. I unlocked the front door and immediately knew something was wrong. The smell hit first. Damp, musty, wrong. Then I saw the floor. The beautiful original hardwood was warped, buckling in places. Water stains everywhere. Daisy, I said quietly, don't come in yet. But she was already beside me. Oh my God. We walked through the first floor in complete shock. The living room ceiling had partially collapsed. Water damage across every wall. The stained glass windows were intact, but the wooden frames were swollen and rotting. The kitchen floor was completely destroyed. Tiles cracked and lifted. Our furniture was soaked and ruined. Photos we'd framed from our wedding were water-stained and warped. Keepsakes from our honeymoon destroyed. The dining room was the worst. The ceiling had caved in completely. Chunks of plaster and drywall across the antique table that had been Victoria's grandmother's. Water still dripping from somewhere above. The walls were stained and bulging. Daisy was shaking. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. This was deliberate. I pulled out my phone and called Victoria. Then the police. Then our insurance. Victoria arrived first, about 20 minutes later. She had her head of security with her, Marcus. They walked through the damage in silence, Marcus taking photos and notes. How bad? I asked. Marcus answered. Structural damage. Water's been running for at least 36 hours, maybe longer. This wasn't a burst pipe or failed water heater. Someone did this deliberately. How can you tell? He pointed to the basement door. We'd walked right past it in our shock. Forced entry. Lock's been jimmied. And the water damage pattern is wrong for an accident. This was sabotage. How did they get in without triggering the alarm? I asked. Marcus examined the door frame. This is an older exterior basement entrance. The main system covers windows and primary doors, but this wasn't on the sensor loop yet. We were scheduled to upgrade it next month. Victoria pulled out her phone and made a call. Yes, I need you at the property immediately. Bring the footage from all cameras, last 72 hours. Yes, the Coleman Trust property. Thank you. She hung up. My attorney is on her way. Police first, then my insurance investigator in the morning. Don't touch anything else. This is a crime scene now. The police arrived within 30 minutes. They documented everything, took statements, photographed the forced entry. One officer looked at the damage and shook his head. This wasn't random. Whoever did this had a plan. The insurance investigator arrived early the next morning. He photographed everything, documented the forced basement door, took notes on the damage patterns. Then Marcus returned with a laptop. He pulled up the camera footage, and we all watched. Jenna's car appeared on the front camera at 1:53 a.m. Saturday morning. She sat there for 8 minutes, just sitting in the car, staring at the house. Then she drove away. That's not proof, the investigator said. But it's very interesting timing. There's more, Marcus said. He pulled up another camera angle. Back camera caught someone moving along the side of the house toward the basement entrance at 2:14 a.m. Too dark to see a face, but the build and gate match your sister from other footage we have. The investigator leaned forward. The security company can confirm the basement entrance was breached between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. Saturday. Still circumstantial, the attorney said, but building a pattern. Then my phone rang. Rachel. Kyle, I need to tell you something right now. Jenna called me yesterday, drunk and bragging. She said, and I'm quoting, sometimes karma needs a push. Sometimes people need a reality check about what they really have. I put her on speaker. Everyone listened. Did she say anything specific about what she did? The investigator asked. She said she'd handled things. That Kyle and Daisy would understand soon what really matters. That material things are temporary. She was laughing about it. The investigator made notes. Then he looked up. Do you have that conversation saved? I recorded it, Rachel said. I thought it sounded weird, so I started recording mid-conversation. I'll send it now. The investigator's expression changed. Then there's one more thing, Daisy said. She pulled up Jenna's social media on her phone. Look at this, a post from 3:47 a.m. Saturday morning, just hours after the camera footage. Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. Maybe a little reality check will help them remember what's actually important. The investigator took screenshots. His whole demeanor had shifted. This isn't circumstantial anymore. This is a pattern of evidence. The post, the audio confession to a family member, the camera footage, the forced entry. I'm recommending full criminal investigation. He looked at us. I'm very sorry this happened, but whoever did this made several mistakes. And that means consequences. The police got involved within hours once they reviewed all the evidence. The detective who took our statement had seen cases like this before, family disputes that escalated into property crimes. The evidence package was overwhelming. Each piece alone was circumstantial. Together, they were damning. The detective called 2 days later. We're filing charges. Felony property damage with evidence of premeditation. Given the property value and the extent of damage, this is serious. How serious? I asked. If convicted, 2 to 5 years potentially. But most cases like this plea out. The evidence is strong enough that her attorney will recommend a deal. Victoria's attorney moved just as fast. She filed for restraining orders against all 3 of them. Jenna for the crime itself, Frank and Linda for enabling and encouraging the behavior pattern, their names on those contractor calls, their continued harassment even after legal warnings. The insurance estimated damages at $220,000 for repairs. That covered structural work, water damage remediation, complete floor replacement, ceiling reconstruction, electrical inspection, mold prevention. The trust property meant Victoria's commercial insurance would handle most of it, but the deductible was $35,000. Victoria paid it without hesitation. This is what family does, she said simply. Protects each other. The repairs took 4 months. 4 months of living in a corporate rental that Victoria arranged. 4 months of watching our home get rebuilt. 4 months of dealing with investigators, insurance adjusters, contractors, and legal proceedings. Frank and Linda tried to call once, 2 weeks after the charges were filed. Victoria's attorney shut that down with an updated cease and desist that included clauses about third-party contact and social media monitoring. When they tried to reach out through extended family, those relatives received similar letters. Jenna fought the charges for about 3 weeks. Then her public defender sat down with her and showed her the evidence file, the camera timestamps, the audio recording, the social media post, the forced entry, the pattern of harassment and entitlement. He told her the DA had a 97% conviction rate on cases this solid, that if she went to trial and lost, she'd face maximum sentencing, that the plea offer on the table was as good as it would get. She took the plea. Probation, restitution, permanent restraining order. The alternative was trial and probable jail time. The restitution amount was $47,000, her share of what insurance didn't cover plus legal fees. The payment plan would take her 7 years minimum. We didn't attend the plea hearing. Our attorney represented us, but I read the transcript later. Jenna had to allocute, which meant she had to admit in open court exactly what she'd done and why. Had to say the words that she deliberately damaged our property because she felt entitled to it. The judge asked if she understood that her actions constituted a serious crime, regardless of her feelings about fairness. She said yes. The judge asked if she understood that restitution and probation were a gift compared to what she deserved. She said yes. Jenna's restraining order was made permanent. 500 feet minimum distance. No contact direct or indirect. Violation meant immediate arrest. Frank and Linda received formal cease and desist orders with harassment clauses. Any pattern of contact, any attempt to coordinate through third parties, any violation of the terms would result in their own restraining orders. 4 months after we moved back in, Victoria had the trust restructured with additional protections. If anything happened to her, the property couldn't be transferred outside the immediate family, couldn't be sold without unanimous agreement, couldn't be encumbered or leveraged. She also upgraded our security system, commercial grade, motion sensors, glass break detectors, cellular backup, direct line to a monitoring service. Our address was unlisted. Property records showed only the trust name, not our personal information. This is yours now, Victoria said as she walked through the restored home. Truly yours. No one can take it. No one can claim it. It's protected legally and physically. She looked at both of us. I'm sorry you had to learn what your family was capable of, but I'm not sorry you learned it. Better to know who people are before you waste decades trying to maintain relationships with people who don't value you. 6 months after moving back in, I was at the grocery store picking up supplies for dinner. Just a normal Tuesday evening. I turned down the produce aisle and froze. Frank was standing by the apples. He looked older, tired, gray hair where there hadn't been gray before. He saw me at the same moment and went completely still. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then he walked over slowly. Kyle, he said quietly. Frank. He looked down at his cart. Your mother and I are separated. Have been for 3 months. Jenna's working 2 jobs to pay off the restitution. She'll be paying it for years. Everything fell apart after what happened. I didn't respond. I just waited. We thought we were entitled to something, he continued. Because we raised you. Because you got lucky and we didn't. Because life wasn't fair and someone needed to even things out. We convinced ourselves it was about helping Jenna. But really, it was about us feeling cheated. His voice was rough. We lost everything trying to take what was yours. Lost you. Lost our dignity. Linda and I can't even look at each other anymore. I'm sorry that happened, I said. And I meant it. Not sorry for my choices. Sorry that they destroyed themselves, chasing something that was never theirs. I just wanted you to know, Frank said, that we were wrong. That you didn't owe us anything. That we should have been happy for you instead of resentful. I know it's too late. I know you're never going to forgive us. I just needed you to hear it. I thought about all of it. The demands, the harassment, the workplace humiliation, the flood that destroyed our home, the months of rebuilding, the way they twisted family into a weapon. I hope you find peace, I said finally, but not with us. That door closed when you broke into our home and tried to destroy what we built. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't make excuses. Just nodded. Take care of yourself, Frank, I said. He walked away. I watched him go. When I got home, Daisy was in the nursery. 7 months pregnant now, painting the walls a soft yellow while she hummed. Ran into Frank at the store, I told her. Told her everything he'd said. She set down the paintbrush. How do you feel? Like it's finally over, I said. Really over. She nodded toward the room. This is where Jenna wanted to live. The third bedroom she thought she deserved. And now it's our daughter's room. Exactly. She smiled. The best revenge really is just living well. 2 months later, our daughter was born. Victoria cried when she held her granddaughter for the first time. We named her Claire. Frank sent a card when Claire was born. Congratulations. Nothing else. We didn't respond. Sometimes I drive past my parents' old house. It looks smaller and more run down than I remember. I don't feel triumph when I see it. Don't feel vindication. Just feel grateful that I learned the lesson they taught, even if it wasn't the one they meant to teach. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. It's about celebrating each other's happiness instead of resenting it. It's about protection instead of entitlement. Victoria taught me that. Daisy taught me that. They showed me what family actually means. And now I get to teach it to Claire in the house that was given with love and protected with boundaries. That's how you win. Not by destroying the people who tried to destroy you, but by living well. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Parents said, "You're fine on your own. She needs it more." After giving the car, Grandpa bought me to my sister. Grandpa found out, exposed the forgery, threatened legal action, and handed me everything back while my parents lost their minds at the table. Hey, Reddit. My folks always acted like my sister was royalty, and I was just there to survive. One day, things blew up so bad the whole family got dragged into it. But before we get to the chaos, let me tell you how it all started. My name's Jason Reed. I'm 24, live with my parents because rent around here is ridiculous, and work in a small office about 2 miles from our house. My family isn't rich, but we're not broke either. Dad's a contractor, Mom does bookkeeping, and my grandpa Henry basically built half this town back in his day. He's old school, tough guy, retired now but still sharp as a knife. People respect him. I graduated 2 years ago, been trying to build some kind of career since then. I work at a shipping company doing scheduling and logistics. Not glamorous, but it's a start. Here's the thing. Every morning, rain or shine, I walk to work. 2 miles there, 2 miles back. And this isn't some nice stroll through the park. Our weather is either pouring rain or freezing wind most of the year. People at work keep asking why I don't drive. I just say, don't have a car yet, and leave it at that. What I don't tell them is that my grandpa actually bought me a car after graduation. Brand new Toyota. I only found out a year later because my parents gave it to my younger sister Megan instead. Yeah, she's 20, still in college, goes to parties, posts selfies nonstop, that kind of thing. I didn't even know the car was mine until recently, but we'll get there. Anyway, back to the rain. That Monday morning, it was coming down sideways. The kind of rain where no umbrella on earth is big enough. My jacket was soaked through before I even hit the main road. By the time I got to the office, my shoes felt like I had buckets tied to my feet. I pushed through the front doors, dripping water everywhere, and the receptionist, Carrie, gave me that look she always gives me. Like she feels bad, but doesn't want to say it out loud. "Rough morning, Jason," she asked, handing me some paper towels. "Same as every day," I said, forcing a smile. My hair was plastered to my forehead, clothes sticking to me. Upstairs, I passed Sarah from accounting. She shook her head like she always does. "Why don't you just drive, man?" If I had a car, maybe I would, I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. It wasn't funny, though. My hands were shaking from the cold as I sat at my desk. The worst part? My boss, Mr. Edwards, doesn't care about weather excuses. You're late? You're late? End of story. And being soaked through when I show up doesn't exactly scream promotion material. Last week, I overheard him telling another manager, "Jason's a hard worker, but he looks like he's barely holding it together." That stuck with me. So yeah, the walking thing wasn't just annoying, it was actually messing with my job. At lunch, Mark, this guy I talk to sometimes, sat across from me in the break room. "Man, you take the bus or what?" he asked, nodding at my still damp jacket hanging over a chair. "Nope. Walk seriously? 2 miles in this weather?" I shrugged. "Keeps me in shape." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're nuts." What was I supposed to say? Nah, my parents gave away the car that was supposed to be mine? I'm not saying that to a coworker. I had my pride. After work, it was still raining. I started the trek home, hood up, hands buried in my pockets. I cut through the park like I always do. There's this little wooden shelter near the basketball court where I sometimes stop to check my phone out of the rain. That day, I heard a voice before I even got close. Megan's voice. She was leaning against the shelter wall with one of her college friends, laughing into her phone. I was about to just walk past until I heard what she said. "Yeah, Grandpa bought me that Toyota." Sweet, right? Mom and Dad said I deserved it since I've got way more going on than Jason. He's fine walking. He doesn't do anything anyway. I froze, literally stopped in my tracks. Her friend asked something I couldn't hear over the rain, and Megan laughed again. "Jason? Please, he doesn't care. He's used to it." Used to it? I felt my face heat up even though I was half soaked and shivering. She had no idea I was standing maybe 10 feet away, hearing every word. I didn't say anything. Didn't even move until she walked off toward the parking lot, keys jingling in her hand. Then I saw it. The car. My car. Sitting there under the streetlight, clean and shiny while I stood there dripping like a stray dog. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about a car. It was about everything. The way my parents looked at me like I'd be fine no matter what. Like I didn't need help. Like Megan's life somehow mattered more. I walked the rest of the way home in the rain, fists jammed in my pockets, not even feeling the cold anymore. Because now I knew the truth. The next day, I didn't say anything at breakfast. Megan was at the table scrolling her phone, chewing cereal like she had no care in the world. Mom was packing lunches. Dad was reading the news on his tablet. Normal morning, except I couldn't stop thinking about what I heard last night. I watched Megan grab the car keys from the counter like she owned the place. That was it. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "We need to talk about the car." She looked up for maybe half a second, then back at her phone. "What car?" "The Toyota. The one Grandpa bought. It was supposed to be mine." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, are you serious?" Mom and Dad already told me it made more sense for me to have it. "You don't even go anywhere." I stared at her. "I walk to work every day, Megan." 2 miles. In the rain. That car was meant for me. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "You're so dramatic. It's just a car. I actually have a life, you know? College, parties, friends. You're like, what? Work and home. Work and home. Boring." That hit harder than it should have. Dad finally looked up from the tablet. "It's 2 miles for you, son. 2 buses and a transfer for her. From a purely practical standpoint, the car covers more ground with Megan." "Practical for who?" I said. "You could have told me." Instead, I find out because I overheard her bragging about it. Megan shrugged like I was complaining about the weather. "You didn't need it." I did. End of story. Mom chimed in without looking at me, just tossing something into the trash. "Jason, you've always been fine on your own. Megan needs more help right now. She's younger. College is expensive. Just let it go." That line, "you've always been fine on your own," I'd heard it before. When Megan got a laptop for school while I used the old family desktop, when she got her phone upgraded first because she's younger and needs to stay connected, even when birthdays came around and hers turned into big parties while mine were just cake at home. I didn't say anything back then. I thought it didn't matter. But standing there now, dripping anger instead of rainwater, I realized it had been years of the same thing. Megan first. Always Megan. I looked right at her. "You knew it was mine." She put her phone down finally, smirking. "Yeah, and?" I still got it, didn't I? I wanted to say a lot right then, but Dad's voice cut in. "That's enough, both of you. Jason, don't start fights over nothing." Nothing. That word kept bouncing around in my head. I grabbed my jacket off the chair. "Fine," I said. "Enjoy the car." Megan snorted like it was funny. Don't be so salty, Jason. Maybe when I'm done with it, you can have what's left. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. Work was rough that day. I kept replaying the morning in my head. Megan's smirk. Dad calling it nothing. Mom not even looking at me when she said Megan needed more help. By lunch, I couldn't focus on anything. Mark noticed. You good, man? You look like you're about to punch a wall. Family stuff, I said, keeping it short. The rain started again around 5. Not just light rain either. Full sideways wind, water coming down in sheets. The kind where cars drive through puddles and splash the sidewalks. And there I was, walking like always. I cut through the same park on the way home. By then it was dark, streetlights glowing off the wet pavement. My hood kept blowing back in the wind. Halfway through, I slipped on the sidewalk, feet right out from under me. Landed hard on my elbow. Pain shot up my arm so bad I couldn't move for a second. Whoa, you okay? I looked up. Mark. He'd been driving by and saw me go down. Yeah, I muttered, trying to stand. My elbow said otherwise. Get in, he said, unlocking his car. You're gonna freeze out here. I didn't argue. On the drive home, Mark kept glancing at me. You seriously walk in this every day? Yeah. Man, you need a car. I told him everything. About Grandpa. About Megan. About my parents. I told him I'd only found out last week the car was meant for me. But the words stuck. He just nodded. Mark dropped me off in front of the house. Get that arm checked, he said. Yeah, thanks. Inside, Megan's car wasn't in the driveway. Figures. She was probably out with friends while I sat there soaked and hurting. That was the night I decided something was going to change. Sunday morning, I was at home nursing a sore elbow from that fall in the rain. Megan was gone early, probably off to brunch or whatever she does on weekends. Mom was cleaning. Dad was out back messing with the grill even though it was too cold for it. Grandpa Henry called around noon. Jason, he said, voice sharp like always. You free tonight? Yeah, I said. Good. Whole family's coming for dinner. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. That was it. No explanation. Typical Henry. I didn't think much of it at first. He has these family dinners every couple months. Usually nothing dramatic, just food and him giving people updates about his garden or whatever project he's into. But there was something in his tone this time. Short. Clipped. Later, I found out what happened. My coworker Mark goes to the same church as Grandpa Henry. Small town, everybody knows everybody. After Sunday service that morning, Mark was talking to Henry about how nice it was that he bought that new car for his granddaughter. Henry said, Granddaughter? Mark nodded. Yeah, Megan. She drives it to campus all the time. Jason told me you gave it to her after graduation. Real generous of you. Henry didn't say much back. Just gave one of those tight smiles he does when he's mad. Mark said he walked off without another word. So yeah, by the time dinner rolled around, Grandpa already knew something was off. When we got to his place that evening, you could feel it right away. The man wasn't smiling. Normally, he greets everybody at the door, makes small talk, pours drinks. Not tonight. He just nodded and told us to sit. The whole family was there. Me, Mom, Dad, Megan, even Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve with their 2 kids. Big table, big meal, but quiet. We ate for a few minutes with just the sound of silverware clinking. Then Henry spoke. Jason, he said, looking straight at me. How's the car? I froze. Megan's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Mom glanced at Dad. Dad cleared his throat. What car? I said, even though I knew exactly what he meant. Henry's eyes narrowed. The Toyota I bought you for graduation. The table went dead silent. Aunt Carol stopped chewing. Uncle Steve raised his eyebrows like he already knew this was about to get ugly. Megan finally spoke. Oh, that car? Grandpa, Mom, and Dad said it was better for me to have it. Jason doesn't mind. I turned to her. Doesn't mind? You've been driving past me in the rain for a year. She shrugged. You never said anything. Henry didn't raise his voice. He set his fork down with care and folded his hands. Thomas. Linda. Explain. Dad held up his hands. Dad, relax. We thought it made sense. Jason works close by. Megan has classes across town. Late nights. She needed it more. You forged his name on the paperwork, Henry said. Not a question. A statement. Mom didn't look at me. Jason, your sister's younger. Late classes. Ride shares falling through. She needs the safety net right now. I felt my chest tighten. Handouts? It was mine. You didn't even tell me. Megan rolled her eyes. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Henry turned on her so fast she actually leaned back in her chair. You knew it was for him? She kept the car on campus most weeks. No Sunday drives by Henry's place, no chance meetings, so he never saw her in it. She smirked like it was nothing. I figured, but Mom said, I don't care what your mother said. His voice was like a whip. I bought it for Jason. It was in his name. You had no right. Dad tried again. Dad, Megan's young. She's got more going on. Jason can handle himself. He always has. That line again. He can handle himself. Like that made it okay. Henry's face went red. So because he doesn't complain, you take advantage? Is that it? Nobody answered. I finally spoke up. I've been late to work because of this. Missed opportunities. I walk home in storms while they hand her the keys. And you all just... What? Pretend it's fine? Megan muttered under her breath. It's not the end of the world. Henry heard it. Not the end of the world? He stood so fast his chair tipped. You let him suffer so she could play princess with something that wasn't hers. And you lied to me about it. Dad's jaw tightened. Dad, you're making a scene. Henry leaned over the table, eyes locked on him. You haven't seen me make a scene yet. The room went silent again. You could hear the clock ticking in the hall. Then Henry said, calm but cold, after dinner, we're fixing this. Tonight. Nobody argued after that. The tension in that dining room felt like the air before a thunderstorm. Nobody touched their food after Grandpa Henry said we were fixing it tonight. Megan sat with her arms crossed like she was the victim. Mom kept her eyes on her plate. Dad stared at Henry like he was trying to stare him down. But everyone knew Henry always won those battles. Henry pointed right at Dad. Thomas, you tell me right now why you thought it was okay to forge your own son's name on something I bought for him. Dad set his fork down slowly. I already told you. Megan had a bigger need. Jason works close by. He doesn't need a car for a 2-mile commute. She's in college, late nights, different campuses. Stop. Henry's voice cut him off like a knife. Don't stand there and justify stealing from one child to spoil the other. Mom finally spoke up, soft but defensive. Dad, it wasn't stealing. It's all in the family. Jason's always been the strong one. He never needed as much help as Megan. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. You call walking to work in storms not needing help? You think showing up drenched, late, freezing, while she drives by laughing with her friends is fine? Megan rolled her eyes. I never laughed at you. Yes, you did, I shot back. Last week. You drove right by while I was soaked to the bone. You waved out the window. For a blink, she looked guilty. Then the smirk slid back into place. That was just me saying hi, she said, smirking like it was all a joke. Henry slammed his hand on the table. The plates jumped. You think this is funny, Megan? Watching your brother struggle while you ride around in something that wasn't even yours? She flinched a little but kept her mouth shut. Henry turned to Dad again. Where are the papers? The title. Dad shifted in his chair. At home. Mom tried to step in again. Dad, you're overreacting. Megan's used to the car now. Taking it away will ruin everything for her classes. Henry cut her off. And what about Jason's life? Did that matter at all while you two were playing favorites? Dad's jaw tightened. It's not favoritism. Jason doesn't complain. He handles things. I looked right at him. Maybe I don't complain because you don't listen anyway. That shut him up for a second. Megan finally snapped, throwing her napkin down. Oh my God. This is ridiculous. It's just a car. Jason can buy his own if it's that serious. Henry's head turned so fast toward her, I thought she might actually shrink into her chair. You're driving something you had no right to. Bought with my money. Meant for him. And you sit here acting like it's nothing. She crossed her arms again, muttering, whatever. Henry leaned on the table, both hands flat. Thomas, Linda, I've watched for years while you spoil one kid and expect the other to survive on scraps. It ends tonight. Mom's face went red. Dad, don't talk like that in front of everyone. Why not? Henry shot back. Maybe everyone should see what kind of parents you've been. Aunt Carol cleared her throat like she wanted to disappear. Uncle Steve just kept eating slowly like he was watching TV. Dad's voice rose. You're making this bigger than it is. We did what made sense. No, Henry said, pointing right at him. You did what was easy. You gave the loud one everything and left the quiet one to fend for himself. Because it cost you nothing to ignore him. I felt my stomach twist because he was right. Megan muttered, It's still not fair to just take it now. Henry's voice dropped low. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Jason's been walking through storms while you drive past him in his car? Forged paperwork? Lies? And you call that fair? Nobody said a word. Henry pushed his chair back. After dinner, we get the title. Then tomorrow, the car goes to Jason. If you refuse, I call the lawyer and the police. Forgery's a crime, Thomas's. Dad's face went pale at the word crime. Mom started to say something, but Henry held up a hand. Not another word. You've done enough talking. The room stayed dead silent except for the clock ticking on the wall. You could feel the whole thing splitting the family right down the middle. Henry sat back down, still glaring at Dad. Eat your food, then we settle this. Nobody had much of an appetite after that. Dinner ended with barely anyone touching the food. As soon as plates were cleared, Henry stood up and told Dad to follow him. Where are we going? Dad asked. Your house, Henry said. We're getting the paperwork right now. Nobody argued. Mom looked nervous but didn't say a word. Megan huffed like this was the biggest inconvenience in the world. Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve stayed behind with the kids while the rest of us drove back. At the house, Dad went straight to the filing cabinet in the office. Henry stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes locked on him the whole time. Dad pulled out a folder and handed it over. Henry opened it, flipping through slowly. Then he stopped, held up one page, and his face went hard. Jason, he said, come here. I walked over. At the top of the page was my name, neat and typed. At the bottom, a signature that wasn't mine. Henry turned on Dad. You forged his signature to transfer the title to Megan. Most of the mail and the insurance were under my parents' address and policy anyway. Anything from the DMV went straight to them. Dad didn't even deny it. It was just easier that way. Jason was at work. We needed the paperwork done fast. Fast? Henry snapped. You needed it fast so you could give away something that wasn't yours. That's what you mean. Mom jumped in from the hallway. Dad, stop acting like this is criminal. It's family business. We were just trying to help Megan. Help her? Henry's voice was rising now. You lied to me. You stole from him. You left him to freeze in the rain while you played favorites. And now I see forgery on top of it. Megan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. It's still just a car. You're all acting like it's life or death. Henry wheeled on her. It's not about the car anymore. It's about respect, about fairness, about the way this family treats Jason like he doesn't matter. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. This is so dramatic. I finally spoke. Megan, you knew it was mine. You saw me walking every day. You knew what Mom and Dad did, and you didn't care. She shrugged. I didn't ask for it. They gave it to me. And you didn't refuse either, I said. You drove right by me like it was funny. Her mouth opened like she had a comeback, but nothing came out. Henry turned back to Dad. You forged his name for what? So she could ride around like some queen while he works his tail off? What else have you lied about? Dad slammed the drawer shut. Nothing. We just thought Megan needed it more. Henry held up the paper. You understand this is illegal, right? Forging a signature? Dad glared. You wouldn't call the cops on your own son. You want to test me? Henry's voice was ice. Because I will. This ends tonight. Mom's voice went sharp. Dad, you can't just undo everything. Megan's used to the car now. Taking it away will mess up her whole semester. Henry pointed at me. And what about Jason's life? Did it matter at all to you? Did it matter when he walked through storms while you two covered for her? Did it matter when he showed up to work soaked while Megan blasted music driving by in his car? Mom went quiet. Henry shoved the folder into my hands. This belongs to you. Tomorrow we change the title back legally. If Thomas or Linda so much as hesitate, I call the lawyer myself. Dad's face turned red. Dad, this is insane. We're family. Henry didn't back down. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie. You lost the right to hide behind that word the second you pulled this stunt. The room went silent except for the rain hitting the windows. Then Henry spoke again, slower this time. And since you clearly can't be trusted, there's something else you all need to know. Mom frowned. What are you talking about? Henry looked right at me. I've been saving money for Jason since he was a kid. A trust fund. Planned to give it to him later, but now, after this, I'm moving it out of your control permanently. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad stiffened like someone had punched him. Megan stopped smirking. You can't just do that, Dad said. I can, Henry replied. And I will. Because you've shown me what happens when you're in charge of anything that belongs to him. Mom's voice rose. Dad, be reasonable. We needed to help Megan. She's younger. She needs support. Henry cut her off. No. What you mean is Jason can suffer while Megan coasts through life. You've been doing it for years. It ends tonight. Nobody spoke after that. Henry turned to me. Tomorrow morning, you'll have the car in your name. And the trust. I'll handle everything myself. Dad looked like he wanted to argue, but even he knew it was over. The Monday morning, Henry showed up at our house before anyone was even dressed. He was holding a thick envelope under his arm. He didn't knock. Just walked in like he owned the place. Which honestly, he kind of did. Jason, he said, handing me the envelope right there in the living room. This is yours. Dad came down the stairs buttoning his shirt. Dad, what's going on now? Henry didn't even look at him. I told you last night. We're done playing games. Jason gets the car back today. And he gets this. I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, everything with my name printed clearly at the top. A trust fund. Way bigger than I expected. Mom came in from the kitchen, eyes already narrowing. Dad, this isn't fair. We didn't even know about this. That's the point, Henry said. I kept it private because I thought I could trust you not to screw him over with what little you did know. Clearly, I was wrong. Megan shuffled in, still in pajamas, hair a mess. She saw the envelope in my hands and froze. Wait, she said slowly. What is that? Henry didn't sugarcoat it. Money I've been saving for Jason since he was a kid. Investments, savings accounts, all of it. He gets full control starting today. Megan's jaw dropped. Why him? What about me? Henry turned on her. What about you? You've taken enough that didn't belong to you already? She crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. You're punishing me for Mom and Dad's decision. I spoke up. You didn't exactly fight them on it, Megan. You knew the car was mine. You watched me walking in the rain while you drove past. She bit her lip, but didn't say anything. Dad finally snapped. Dad, you can't just hand him everything like this. We're his parents. We should have some say in this. Henry stepped closer, his voice sharp. You had your chance to look out for him. Instead, you forged his name, lied to me, and spoiled one kid while ignoring the other. You're done having a say. Mom's voice rose, tight and angry. You always favor Jason. Megan's the younger one. She needs more help. Enough, Henry cut her off. Every time you say that, what you really mean is Jason can carry all the weight while Megan coasts through life. You call it helping her, but it's just easier for you. You think because Jason doesn't complain, it doesn't hurt him? You've turned him into the pack mule of this family. That hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. Megan tried again. You act like I stole the car myself. I just took what they gave me. Henry pointed at her. And you never once thought to give it back when you found out it wasn't yours? Never once thought about your brother walking to work every day? She didn't answer. Henry turned back to Dad. I warned you last night. We transfer the car title today. I already called my lawyer this morning. If you refuse, we press charges for forgery. Dad looked stunned. You wouldn't drag this family into court. You did that, Henry said flatly. The moment you decided one child deserved everything and the other got nothing. The room went dead quiet. I looked down at the documents again. My name everywhere. Accounts I never knew existed. Years of savings, investments, enough to change everything. Megan muttered, So he gets the car and the money? That's insane. Henry shot her a look that shut her up instantly. Jason gets what was always his? You had no right to any of it. Mom tried one last time. Dad, be reasonable. Megan's classes, her life. It all depends on that car now. You're ruining her future over some paperwork. Henry's eyes went cold. And what about Jason's future? Did it matter when you made him walk in freezing rain while she drove past? Did it matter when you lied to his face about something meant for him? Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. Henry handed me another paper. This gives you full control of the trust starting today. They can't touch a dime of it, and they won't touch the car again either. The lawyer had already filed the transfer. The bank would flip full access as soon as processing cleared. Dad stared at the floor. Megan looked like she wanted to scream, but couldn't find the words. I finally said it out loud. I'm done letting you all treat me like I don't matter. I'm not your afterthought anymore. Henry nodded like he'd been waiting to hear that. Good. Because things change, starting now. And if anyone here tries to stop it, I'll drag this whole thing to court myself. Nobody argued this time. By noon that same day, Henry had me and Dad at the DMV. He wasn't giving anyone time to think this over or try to back out. The clerk looked over the paperwork, typed a few things into her computer, and handed me the new title. My name. Not Megan's, not my parents'. Mine. Dad stood there stiff the whole time, jaw tight, not saying a word. Henry didn't even look at him. When we walked back out into the parking lot, the Toyota was sitting right there. For the first time since this whole thing started, I had the keys in my hand. Henry clapped me on the shoulder. It's yours now, the way it should have been from the start. Dad muttered, This could have been handled differently. Henry turned on him fast. No, you had your chance to handle it, and you blew it. You lied, forged papers, and left your son to walk in the rain while you spoiled Megan rotten. Don't stand here acting like the victim. Dad didn't say anything after that. When we got back to the house, Mom was waiting. Henry had me call the insurer from the DMV lot. The policy moved under my name, and I took both sets of keys. She saw the keys in my hand and the title folder under my arm, and her face went tight. So that's it? She said. You just take it away from Megan like she doesn't matter? Henry glared at her. You made Jason not matter for a year. Now you're upset Megan loses something that was never hers? Unbelievable. Megan came down the stairs then, saw the folder, and stopped cold. You actually did it? I nodded. It's mine now. Legally. Her arms crossed instantly. This is such crap. I need that car for school. How am I supposed to get around now? Henry didn't let her finish. Maybe ask the parents who caused this mess. Or try walking like your brother's been doing for a year. Actions have consequences, Megan. She glared at him, but didn't talk back this time. Henry pulled the trust paperwork out of the folder and set it on the table. Jason, this gives you full control starting today. Bank accounts, investments, everything in your name alone. Your parents have zero access. I've already called the bank to confirm. Mom snapped. You can't cut us out like this. That money was supposed to be for the family. Henry's voice went cold. No, it was for Jason. I saved every dime myself. You didn't even know it existed. And after this stunt, you never will again. Dad finally spoke up. You're tearing this family apart over one mistake. One mistake? Henry's hand hit the table so hard the papers jumped. You stole from your own son. Lied about it. Let him suffer so Megan could play queen. That's not one mistake. That's who you are. The room went silent. I signed the paperwork while they all watched. Henry stood beside me the whole time like a witness. When I finished, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, It's done! Jason controls his own future now. Nobody here touches what's his ever again. Mom tried again, voice sharp now. So what? He just takes the car, the money, everything? After we raised him? I looked straight at her. You raised me to carry everything while Megan got handed everything. You don't get to play the hero now. Megan muttered, You're acting like you had it so bad. I turned to her. You drove by me in the rain while I walked miles to work. You knew the car was mine. You said nothing. You laughed. So yeah, Megan, I had it bad enough. She looked away, arms still crossed. No comeback this time. Henry faced my parents. You two should be ashamed. You talk about family, but you only ever looked out for one kid? The other you left behind because it was easier for you. Dad's face was red. Mom's lips were tight. Neither spoke. Henry looked at me then. You have the car, the trust. Use both to build something better. Move out if you want. Start fresh. You don't owe them anything now. And for the first time, I realized I didn't. That evening, I packed my things. Just the essentials for now. The house was tense and silent while I loaded the car. Mom sat at the table staring at nothing. Dad stood outside smoking, saying nothing. Megan stayed in her room with the door shut. Henry helped me carry the last box. You sure about this? He asked. Yeah, I said. It's time. He nodded once. Good. Don't let them drag you back into their mess. I drove away before dark. Rain started again halfway across town, but this time I was dry, warm, in a car that was actually mine. I didn't know exactly where I was headed yet. Maybe an apartment, maybe somewhere farther away. But I knew one thing. I wasn't coming back to be the family's afterthought again. They could keep their excuses. I had the keys, the trust, and for the first time in years, control over my own life. And I wasn't giving it back. I was on my 4th work trip. When the email came in, you're fired. I just smiled. 72 hours later, 3 clients froze the deal, and $380 million walked out the door with me. Sup Reddit. I'm Hunter, 31 male. I tried to write the short version of this, but I couldn't. So grab a snack and get comfortable because this one's a bit long and complicated. The email hit my inbox somewhere over the Atlantic. The flight attendant had stopped offering me the complimentary pretzels around hour 2, probably because I'd eaten 4 bags already, and she was starting to look at me with genuine concern. Economy class. 10 days, 3 countries, 4 flights, 1 deal worth $380 million, and I was crammed into a middle seat because someone in accounting had decided that business class tickets were not aligned with current budget priorities. Meanwhile, Bennett Aldrich, the CEO's nephew, had flown business class to a leadership conference in Scottsdale last month, where his biggest accomplishment was getting a sunburn and losing his company laptop at a resort pool. That's when I saw it. Subject line, termination notice, effective immediately. A paragraph of corporate template language explaining that my access had been revoked, my credentials suspended, and that I should not return to company property. The whole thing read like it had been generated by an HR software program that charged by the word and had no soul. Which, now that I think about it, is probably exactly what happened. The sender was Walter Aldrich, CEO of Aldrich Infrastructure Group, The same Walter who had looked me in the eye 11 days ago, shaken my hand with both of his in that way that politicians do, and told me I was the only person he trusted to close the Bridger deal. The Bridger deal. 3 utility clients across 3 regions. Grid-scale solar, battery storage, substation upgrades. I'd spent 10 months building this thing from scratch. Every relationship, every site visit, every conference call at 3 a.m. because someone in Germany didn't understand time zones. $380 million in contracts over 5 years. The biggest deal in company history. I'd signed the final preliminary agreement in Brazil exactly 8 hours ago. Shook hands with their CEO. Now I was unemployed at 35,000 feet, wedged between a snoring stranger and a window that showed nothing but black Atlantic Ocean. I didn't panic, just sat there in that miserable seat, staring at the email, and felt something cold and calm settle into my brain. I tried logging into our project management system. Access denied. Company email, gone. The shared drive with 10 months of my work, locked out. They'd scrubbed me from every system like I was a virus that needed quarantining. I reached into my backpack and pulled out a second laptop. My girlfriend Cassidy had insisted I keep everything separate. She works in contracts and compliance for a different company, and she's the kind of person who reads terms of service documents for fun and spots loopholes in rental agreements within 30 seconds. About 8 months ago, she'd sat me down and explained, in detailed and slightly terrifying terms, exactly how companies screw over departing employees. If they ever try to bury you, she'd said, you need clean hands and clean hardware. Everything on their systems belongs to them. Everything on your systems belongs to you. Never mix the two. I powered on the laptop, logged into an encrypted email service that had nothing to do with Aldrich infrastructure, checked 3 messages from people who had no idea I'd just been fired, but who were very much expecting to hear from me. They thought terminating me mid-flight would leave me stranded and desperate. Instead, they'd just cut the last thread connecting me to a company that had been using me as a workhorse while treating me like a temp. I closed both laptops, shoved the world's worst travel pillow behind my neck, and actually managed to sleep for the first time in 4 days. Now let me back up. 6 months before that email, I started noticing patterns that didn't add up. And I'm not talking subtle hints. I'm talking neon signs with arrows pointing at them. The first red flag was the promotion that evaporated like morning fog. I'd been running international project development for Aldrich for 7 years, closing deals nobody else could close, flying to job sites nobody else wanted to visit, spending holidays in airports and weekends on conference calls with nervous executives who needed their hands held through complex technical decisions. When the VP of Global Operations position opened up, I figured it was basically mine. I had the track record. I had the client relationships. I had recommendation letters from utility executives in 4 different countries who specifically requested me for their projects. Then they gave it to Bennett, the CEO's nephew, a guy who'd been with the company for 19 months and whose primary qualifications seemed to be sharing genetic material with the man who signed the paychecks. His entire professional experience consisted of an MBA from a school that advertised on highway billboards, a brief stint at a consulting firm that no longer existed, and 18 months of sitting in on meetings I ran while occasionally asking questions that made clients uncomfortable. I once watched Bennett ask a utility executive if solar panels stored sunlight for nighttime use. The silence that followed was painful. I had to jump in and redirect the conversation before we lost a $40 million contract to sheer secondhand embarrassment. At the announcement party, Bennett found me near the coffee station and extended his hand with confidence. Hunter, I'm really looking forward to working with you. Learning from you, really. Uncle Walter says you're the best closer we've got. I shook his hand and smiled. Said congratulations. Didn't mention that closer was apparently a different category than leader, and that the distinction seemed to be entirely about whose last name was on the building. The second red flag was the credit theft, which happened with such regularity that I started keeping a spreadsheet. I spent 3 months developing a proposal for a major grid upgrade project in Nevada. Site assessments in desert heat that made my rental car's dashboard display an actual warning about exterior temperatures. Permit research that required me to become an expert in county zoning regulations I'd never wanted to know about. Interconnection studies with the local utility that involved approximately 47 conference calls, each one slightly more tedious than the last. When the client signed, the internal announcement credited the win to the global operations team under Bennett Aldrich's leadership. My name appeared in a footnote, listed under technical consultation. Technical consultation. Like I was the IT guy who fixed the projector, rather than the person who'd built the entire deal and flown out to close it. I brought it up to my manager. He made a face like I'd asked him to solve a complex math problem, while also juggling, and said I should focus on team success rather than individual recognition. I pointed out that there was no team, that I'd done the work alone, and that Bennett had attended exactly one meeting at the very end where his contribution consisted of nodding at appropriate intervals. The third red flag was Bennett himself, who had developed credit theft into an art form. The guy had a sixth sense for showing up at exactly the right moment to claim work he hadn't done. He'd wander into a client meeting I was running, ask one or two surface-level questions, and then somehow end up being the person who led the engagement in the follow-up report. He'd CC himself on email chains he had nothing to do with, then forward them to Walter with commentary that made it sound like he'd been driving the project all along. The worst part was watching him try to actually do technical work. I sat in on a call once where he explained to a client that battery storage systems work basically like a really big phone charger, but for buildings. The client's chief engineer looked like he was experiencing a minor stroke. I had to mute myself so no one would hear me laughing, then unmute to salvage what was left of the conversation. Another time, he tried to lead a site visit at a solar installation we'd completed. He showed up in Italian leather shoes and a fancy suit. By hour 2, he'd stepped in something unpleasant, complained about the heat 6 times, and asked the foreman why the panels weren't facing the sun directly. The foreman, a guy named Doug who'd been in the industry for 30 years, looked at me with an expression that combined exhaustion and murderous intent. I had to explain that the panels were tracking systems that moved throughout the day. Bennett nodded like this was information he'd definitely known all along. He also had a habit of making promises to clients that we couldn't keep. He'd tell them timelines were no problem without checking with engineering. He'd agree to specifications we didn't offer. He'd commit to pricing that didn't exist in any budget I'd ever seen. Then he'd forward the email chain to me with a note saying, "Can you make this work?" But the moment I knew I was truly done came during a board lunch about 4 months before the firing. I was in the adjacent conference room, prepping materials for an afternoon client presentation. The door between the rooms hadn't latched properly. I could hear Walter talking to 2 board members, their voices carrying through the gap. One of the board members laughed about something. Then Walter's voice, clear as day. "Hunter's good at what he does. Excellent closer. But he's not leadership material. Doesn't have the right presence. The clients love him, but we need him in the field, not in the boardroom." I stood there holding a binder full of work that had made these people millions of dollars, heard them reduce 7 years of my career to field work. I walked back to my desk, opened a private browser, and started researching how to form an LLC. That night, I told Cassidy everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that cut through all the noise. "They see you as a tool. You'll never be anything else to them, because you being more than that threatens the people who are less." She helped me build the framework for what would eventually become Ironwood infrastructure. We spent nights and weekends setting it up. No investors. No announcements. No paper trail connecting back to Aldrich. Just a clean legal entity, a growing network of former colleagues who'd been pushed out the same way I was being pushed, and a plan. I kept closing deals for Aldrich, kept flying to job sites, kept smiling in meetings while quietly preparing for the day when smiling wouldn't be necessary anymore. The Bridger deal was supposed to be my masterpiece. 3 utility clients across 3 regions, all signing on for coordinated infrastructure upgrades. Grid-scale solar, battery storage, substation modernization. The kind of project that takes years of relationship building and months of technical coordination. Getting there was its own special adventure. First stop was Frankfurt. My connecting flight out of Newark was delayed 4 hours because of mechanical issues, which the gate agent explained with the weary resignation of someone who'd given this speech 800 times. I missed my original connection and had to sprint through the terminal to catch a later flight that was already boarding, arriving at the gate sweating through my shirt and breathing like I'd just finished a marathon. Then TSA pulled me aside for additional screening, because apparently my carry-on looked suspicious. Spent 20 minutes watching a very serious man examine my electrical equipment samples like they might explode at any moment. He asked me what a transformer specification sheet was. I explained. He nodded like he understood. By the time I landed in Frankfurt, my checked bag had decided to take a vacation to Amsterdam. The airline promised it would arrive within 24 to 48 hours, which meant I spent my first 2 days in Germany doing client meetings in clothes I'd been wearing for almost 20 hours. Klaus Richter ran infrastructure procurement for Rhine Valley Power, and he was the most skeptical client I'd ever worked with. The guy had been burned by American contractors before, missed deadlines, cost overruns, Equipment that showed up and didn't match specifications. He'd made it clear in our first meeting that he didn't trust promises. He trusted performance. Everything else was noise. I spent 4 days doing site visits at locations most executives never see, crawled through electrical substations in rain that felt personal, reviewed transformer specifications with his engineering team until my eyes crossed and my German vocabulary expanded by about 300 technical terms I'd never use in casual conversation. Somewhere around day 3, we stopped at a facility that was having problems with a recent installation. Another contractor's work, not ours, but Klaus wanted to see how I'd handle it. I spent 2 hours with his maintenance team, worked through the issue, and identified a wiring problem that the original contractor had missed. Klaus watched the whole thing without saying a word. When I finished, he nodded once. Just once. But I could see something change in his expression. That evening, we grabbed dinner at a small restaurant near his office. Somewhere between the schnitzel and the coffee, he leaned back and looked at me directly. What happens if Aldrich has internal problems? If there's turnover? Aldrich has depth, I said. But I'll be straight with you. Most of that depth is me and my team. If something changes, you should have options. He studied me for a long moment. Options are good. Send me options. Second stop was outside Austin. The flight from Frankfurt was uneventful, which felt suspicious after everything else. My bag had finally caught up with me. The plane landed on time. I started to relax. Then customs decided I looked interesting. Spent 45 minutes in a small room answering questions about why I'd visited 3 countries in 10 days and what exactly was in the equipment cases I was carrying. The officer kept asking about electrical components, like I might be building something dangerous. I explained transformer specifications approximately 6 times. He nodded and kept asking the same questions. Eventually, his supervisor came over, looked at my paperwork, looked at me, and waved me through with a shrug. Welcome to international business travel. Wade Thornton ran Lone Star Grid Solutions, and he was the biggest potential client in the deal. He'd built his company from nothing in the Texas energy market, which meant he'd survived oil crashes, regulatory changes, and about 6 different economic cycles that should have killed his business. He had 0 patience for corporate nonsense, and a reputation for firing contractors who didn't deliver. I met him at a job site about an hour outside the city. Active construction. Crews everywhere. Equipment moving. We walked the entire site together. Wade asked detailed questions about supply chains, bonding capacity, insurance coverage, backup plans, the kind of questions that told me he'd been burned before and wasn't getting burned again. At one point, we stopped near a row of battery storage units being installed. Wade looked at them, then at me. You're the reason I'm still in this deal. You know that, right? I told him I appreciated the confidence. Not confidence, he said. Observation. Your company's got nice offices, pretty marketing materials, but you're the one who actually knows what's happening. I've worked with enough empty suits to spot the real ones. I mentioned casually that I was always looking at ways to reduce overhead and improve delivery for clients who valued results over presentation. He raised an eyebrow. You starting something? I said I believed in keeping options open. He nodded. Smart. Keep me posted on those options. Third stop was Sao Paulo. Getting into Brazil was its own adventure. My visa had a date discrepancy that the immigration officer found fascinating. We had a 30-minute conversation in my broken Portuguese and his broken English that accomplished absolutely nothing except mutual frustration. Eventually, another officer came over, stamped my passport, and waved me through with what might have been an apology or might have been an insult. Marco ran Verde Energia, a fast-growing utility with aggressive expansion plans, and a CEO who made decisions at a speed that terrified most American contractors. He'd scheduled 4 meetings in one day, a site inspection at a solar farm 2 hours outside the city, and a dinner with his executive team that would run until midnight. The man apparently functioned on 3 hours of sleep and expected everyone around him to keep pace. The site visit was brutal. 2 hours each way in a van with no air conditioning, on roads that had apparently been designed by someone with a grudge against suspension systems. My shoes weren't built for walking solar farms, and I'd lost my boots somewhere in the airline system's digestive tract. By the time we finished, my feet were destroyed, and I was pretty sure I'd developed a minor heat stroke. But Marco was impressed. When he walked me to my cab that evening, he gripped my shoulder. You are the deal hunter, not your company, not their executives. You. If you ever decide to work for yourself, I want to be your first call. 3 cities, 3 clients, 3 seeds planted in soil. Aldrich infrastructure didn't even know existed. I flew home feeling like I was carrying something valuable and dangerous. A loaded weapon that nobody could see. The call from my brother came 2 days before I left for the international trip, and in retrospect, every alarm bell I ignored should have been deafening. Lucas and I had never been close. 3 years younger. Significantly better at making our parents happy. Had somehow turned a mediocre business degree and a talent for talking into a career of consulting gigs that never lasted more than a year, but always sounded impressive at family dinners. Growing up, he was the charmer, the one who could talk his way out of anything, the one who got caught cheating on a test and somehow convinced the teacher it was a misunderstanding. Our parents adored him. When I saved money from my first job, my parents suggested I lend some to Lucas for his startup idea. When that startup failed, which it did spectacularly, nobody expected him to pay me back. I was the responsible one. Lucas was the creative one. So when he called asking to meet for coffee, I should have been suspicious. He never called to catch up. We met at a place near my apartment. He showed up late, which was standard. He'd always been good at looking successful, even when his bank account told a different story. The conversation started normal. How's work? How's Cassidy? The usual small talk that people use to circle around what they actually want to discuss. Then Lucas started asking questions that felt different. How was the company doing? Were there any big changes coming up? What was my relationship like with leadership? Was I happy there? Had I thought about doing my own thing? That last question should have set off every alarm I had. He had never cared about my career before, except as something to compare unfavorably to his own alleged potential. But I was tired and distracted and focused on the upcoming trip, so I gave vague answers. Things are busy, got some travel coming up, same old grind. Lucas nodded along, asking follow-up questions that felt oddly specific. Did I know Bennett Aldrich? What did I think of him? Had I heard anything about changes in company leadership? I told him Bennett was the CEO's nephew and left it at that. Didn't think much of it. 2 weeks later, sitting on that transatlantic flight with a termination email on my screen, I started connecting dots that should have been obvious from the beginning. Cassidy figured it out first. She'd gotten her hands on my severance paperwork, which had arrived via email about an hour after the termination notice, and she was going through it with the kind of intense focus she usually reserved for contract negotiations. Around page 6, she stopped and looked up. There's a reference here to credible third-party information suggesting competitive activities. What does that mean? I felt something cold move through my chest. Show me. She turned the laptop around. There it was, buried in the legal justification section. Credible third-party sources. Information indicating potential competitive preparations. Grounds for immediate termination without standard notice period. Third-party sources. Someone had talked, and given the timing, the specificity, and the fact that only a handful of people knew about Ironwood, the list of suspects was very short. I called Lucas from the airport the moment I landed. Hunter, how was the trip? I heard you were traveling. How did you hear that, Lucas? A pause. What do you mean? You mentioned it when we got coffee. I said I had travel coming up. I didn't say where or when. How did you know I'd be traveling right now? Longer pause. Look, I don't know what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. How did you know about my travel? And why is there a reference to third-party sources in my termination paperwork? Who else knew about Ironwood? Silence. Okay, fine. I've been talking to Bennett Aldrich. We met at a networking thing a few months ago. He's a good guy, Hunter. Really smart. He has some interesting ideas about... What did you tell him, Lucas? Another pause. I don't know. Stuff. We just talk. About business. About opportunities. Did you tell him about Ironwood? About the work I've been doing on the side? The silence told me everything. I'd been careful. Separate devices. Encrypted communications. No paper trail connecting back to Aldrich. Different coffee shops for every meeting. Code names that sounded ridiculous but served their purpose. I'd treated this like a covert operation because I knew how corporate politics worked, but I'd mentioned the project to Lucas 3 months ago, during a family dinner, when he wouldn't stop pushing about whether I'd ever do something for myself, instead of working for someone else's dream. I'd mentioned it in general terms, just enough for him to know I was building something on the side. And Lucas, being Lucas, had seen an opportunity, had recognized that information was currency, had traded his brother's career for a handshake and a promise from the CEO's nephew, probably over expensive dinners, where they congratulated each other on being entrepreneurial spirits who understood how the real world worked. They offered me a job, Lucas said finally, and I could hear pride in his voice. Director of Business Development. Real salary, real title. Bennett said I had exactly the kind of strategic thinking they needed. They used you to get to me. That's not fair. I'm building my own path here. Not everything is about you, Hunter. They used you, Lucas. You gave them everything they needed to time my termination perfectly. Fire me while I'm stuck on a plane over the ocean. No cell service. No way to respond. No chance to talk to clients or protect relationships. Hours before I could contact anyone. You helped them plan that. Silence. When he spoke again, his voice had hardened into something I'd heard before. The tone he used when he was caught, and had decided to go on offense instead of admitting anything. Maybe if you'd helped me more, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. You've got all this success, all these connections, and what have you ever done for your family? You couldn't even give me a reference for that consulting firm. Couldn't loan me money without making me feel like garbage about it. You've always thought you were better than me. I've always thought you were capable of more than you showed. Apparently, I was wrong about that too. Whatever. I found my own path. Sorry if that's inconvenient for you. I hung up without responding. That night, Cassidy and I sat in her apartment, going through everything. The timeline of Lucas's questions, the timing of the termination, the severance paperwork designed to lock me out of the industry. He didn't just leak information, Cassidy said quietly. He helped them plan it. The timing, the approach. He knew you'd be vulnerable on that flight. My brother had sold me out for a job title and a chance to finally be the successful one. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I said, okay, now I know where everyone stands. The HR meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. the day after I landed. I'd spent most of the night at Cassidy's place, and she'd walked me through exactly what to expect. They're going to make it feel like a formality, she said around 2 a.m. Coffee in hand, highlighter in the other. Like signing is just the obvious next step. They'll act sympathetic. They'll talk about transitions and opportunities, and somewhere in the paperwork, there'll be something designed to bury you. I asked what I should do. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't let them convince you that cooperation will help. It won't. Their only goal is protecting themselves. I showed up at Aldrich headquarters at 8:45. Walked through the lobby I'd walked through 1,000 times. Past the reception desk where everyone suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. Got stopped at the security desk by a guard I'd never seen before. This guy was young, clearly new, clearly nervous. He checked my ID 3 times. Made 2 phone calls where he mostly listened and said, "Yes, sir," a lot. Then he escorted me to a conference room on the 3rd floor, like I was there to rob the place instead of being robbed myself. On the way, we passed my old office. My desk had already been cleared. 7 years of work, and they'd erased every trace of me in less than 24 hours. The only thing left was a company coffee mug I'd never liked anyway. The conference room had 4 people waiting. Janet, the HR director, who I'd had pleasant conversations with for years, and who was now looking at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in from the street. A lawyer I'd never met who had the vibe of someone who'd foreclosed on an orphanage and felt okay about it. A guy from risk management, who spent the entire meeting taking notes without ever making eye contact. And Bennett, sitting at the head of the table like he'd earned the right to be there, with a folder in front of him and a smile that made me want to rearrange his face. They walked me through the termination paperwork. Position eliminated. Restructuring. Company appreciates my years of service. I would receive severance equal to 3 months' salary, which sounded generous until you read the fine print. In exchange for the severance, I would sign a non-compete covering the entire energy infrastructure sector for 36 months. 3 years. No working for competitors. No starting my own business in the industry. No contact with any current or former Aldrich clients. I sat there and let them finish their script. Didn't interrupt, just listened and cataloged. When they were done, Bennett leaned forward with that smile still plastered on his face. I want you to know there's no hard feelings here, Hunter. We just think the company needs to move in a different direction. More collaborative. Less dependent on individual contributors. I nodded. Then I picked up the severance agreement and started reading. Cassidy had prepared me for this. We'd gone through every possible clause they might bury in the language. And there it was. Page 8, paragraph 4. The non-compete didn't just prevent me from working for competitors. It prevented me from engaging in any business relationship with current or former clients of the company for a period of 36 months. They were trying to lock me out of everyone I'd ever built a relationship with. I put the document down and looked at Janet. I'm not signing this. The room went quiet. Bennett's smile flickered like a bad fluorescent light. The lawyer started explaining how standard this language was, how reasonable the terms were, how I should really consider having my own attorney review things. I let him talk. When he finished, I stood up. I'll take the termination. I'm not taking the severance. And I'm not signing anything that restricts my future employment. Bennett actually laughed. You're walking away from 3 months of salary because you don't like the paperwork? I looked at him for a long moment. The guy who'd taken credit for my work, who'd gotten handed a VP title while I got pushed out the door. I'm walking away because your paperwork is designed to bury me, and I'm not interested in being buried. Then I left. The security guard escorted me out of the building. He apologized quietly near the exit. I told him it wasn't his fault. He looked relieved. 2 hours later, Cassidy and I were at her kitchen table, going through everything I knew about the Bridger deal. The first call came that afternoon. Klaus Richter from Rhine Valley Power. I heard you left the company. What happened? I was terminated. Effective immediately. No explanation. Long pause. That is unexpected. We had concerns about key personnel continuity. This confirms them. I understand if you need to reassess the project. We are reassessing, but not in the way you might think. We're pausing all work with Aldrich until we understand the situation better. If you land somewhere stable, contact me immediately. Within 72 hours of my termination, all 3 Bridger clients had frozen the deal. Klaus called first. Wade called the next morning. Marco's office sent a formal notice that afternoon. Key person risk. Leadership concerns. By the end of the week, the freeze was official on paper, and Aldrich's $380 million pipeline had turned into a $380 million question mark. Bennett's first client meeting without me was a disaster. And I mean the kind of disaster that becomes a cautionary tale people tell at industry conferences for years. I heard about it from Denise, who was still in touch with people inside. Apparently, Bennett had flown to Texas to reassure Wade Thornton that the Bridger project was in excellent hands. Spent 20 minutes talking about synergistic opportunities and collaborative value creation and innovative paradigm shifts. Wade sat there with an expression that witnesses described as slowly turning to stone. Then Wade asked a basic question about battery degradation rates and expected replacement cycles. The kind of question that anyone actually managing this project should have been prepared for. Bennett had no idea. Not even close. He tried to bluff his way through with something about industry standard expectations, which made it obvious he had no clue what industry standards actually were. When Wade pushed for specifics, Bennett apparently said something about the batteries being under warranty, which wasn't even relevant. Wade ended the meeting after 30 minutes. Told his assistant to cancel the dinner reservation they'd made. Lone Star Grid officially withdrew from the project 2 days later with a letter that Wade apparently wrote himself instead of having legal handle it. Rhine Valley followed a week after that. Klaus sent a politely devastating email explaining that his organization could not proceed with a strategic partnership absent the leadership continuity that had been foundational to our engagement. Corporate speak for, we trusted Hunter, not your nephew who doesn't know how batteries work. Verde Energia held on a little longer. Marco was a patient man, and he was willing to give Aldrich a chance to find a replacement who could actually do the job. That chance lasted about 3 weeks. Aldrich sent 3 different executives to Sao Paulo, none of whom spoke Portuguese, understood Brazilian regulations, or had ever actually walked a job site. The third one apparently got lost on the way to the airport and missed a meeting entirely. Marco called me directly one night. I want to work with you. Whatever company you're building, I'm in. Ironwood Infrastructure went from backup plan to active operation in about 72 hours. Cassidy helped finalize the compliance paperwork. My former colleague, Denise, who'd been pushed out of Aldrich 2 years earlier for raising concerns about corner cutting, came on as operations director. Nathan, an engineer I'd worked with on a dozen projects, handled technical specifications. We didn't have fancy offices. We worked out of a rented space in an industrial park that smelled vaguely of the auto shop next door. But we had insurance, bonding capacity, regulatory compliance in 3 jurisdictions, and relationships with every client and supplier that mattered. I sent proposals to all 3 former Bridger clients. Same project scope, leaner structure, direct accountability, no middlemen. All 3 signed within 3 weeks. $380 million in contracts. Gone from Aldrich, landed with me. Walter Aldrich tried to reach me twice during this period. Left voicemails that started angry and gradually became confused. He couldn't understand how 3 clients who'd been ready to sign had suddenly evaporated. Couldn't understand how his nephew, who he'd positioned as the future of the company, had managed to destroy more value in 1 month than most employees create in a career. I didn't return his calls. The really satisfying part was watching the promises collapse. Lucas's Director of Business Development position evaporated about 6 weeks after the Bridger collapse, when Aldrich started cutting costs to stay solvent. No job, no title. Just a handshake from a sinking ship and a nephew who'd already moved on to blaming everyone but himself. He texted me twice looking for help. I didn't respond. 6 months later, I walked into Ironwood Infrastructure's new office for the first time as someone who actually owned the company. The conference room had a table I'd bought used from a company that went under, surrounded by chairs that didn't quite match. On the wall near the entrance, someone had hung a simple metal sign, Ironwood Infrastructure, founded by Hunter Mercer. I stood there looking at it for longer than I probably should have. 7 years at Aldrich, and my name never appeared on anything that mattered. Now it was literally on the building. The Bridger project was fully underway. Rhine Valley had broken ground on 2 substation upgrades. Lone Star's first solar installation was ahead of schedule. Verde had expanded their contract twice since signing. Total value across all 3 clients was tracking toward $420 million over 5 years. Walter was removed from his position as CEO about 4 months after the collapse. The board cited strategic differences, which is corporate speak for, "You lost us $380 million and your nephew made us look like idiots." Last I heard, he was consulting for a smaller firm in the Midwest, far away from anyone who remembered his confident predictions about Bennett being the future of the company. Bennett himself lasted about 2 weeks longer than his uncle, resigned to pursue other opportunities. Apparently, he's trying to launch some kind of consulting practice now. I give it 6 months. Lucas got his Director of Business Development title for exactly 43 days before the company started cutting costs. He called me looking for help, then texted, then sent a long email explaining that he was sorry and that family should stick together, and that he was sure I understood it was just business. I didn't respond to any of it. My parents handled the situation exactly how I expected. My mom called to tell me I was being too hard on Lucas, that family should forgive each other, that holding grudges wasn't healthy. She mentioned that Lucas was going through a difficult time and could really use his brother's support. I asked her if she knew what Lucas had done. She said she'd heard his side of things and thought there had been misunderstandings on both sides. I asked her if Lucas had mentioned that he'd been feeding information about me to the CEO's nephew for months. She said she didn't understand corporate things and that I was being legalistic about a family matter. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't interested in having this conversation again. She didn't call for 3 months after that. When she finally did, she didn't bring up Lucas. Cassidy and I got engaged about 2 months after Ironwood officially launched. Small ceremony. She's still doing contracts and compliance work, now as an outside consultant for Ironwood. Turns out having someone who understands legal language and actually cares about your success is worth more than any executive title or family name. The funny thing about revenge is that I never actually planned for any of it. I just built something of my own, protected it carefully, and let the people who underestimated me create their own problems. They did the rest themselves. You don't have to burn anything down. You just have to be ready when it starts burning on its own. And when someone offers you a seat at a table you built yourself, you'll know exactly what it's worth. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My parents said I was just the responsible one while they paid for my brother's lies. I paid rent. He crashed cars. They even helped him hide a kid. Then he stole my credit and blamed me. So I cut them off, helped the kid's mom sue him, and made sure everyone knew. Now they're broke, and I don't answer their calls. Hey Reddit, I don't usually post on here. I just scroll, read drama, and mind my business. But things at home went so sideways, I honestly didn't know where else to drop this. I, 31 male, am the older brother. Grew up in a pretty average house. 2 parents, 1 younger brother. You'd think being the firstborn, I'd get the respect, the responsibility, all that. And I did, for about 5 years. Then Josh was born. Since then, I've basically just been the guy who works, pays bills, keeps quiet, and gets blamed when stuff goes sideways. Josh, 24 male, is 7 years younger than me. He's 24 now. Still lives at home, doesn't work, never has, unless you count a 3-week part-time job he quit because the manager was annoying. He stays up all night, sleeps all day, eats whatever's around, and talks to our parents like they're employees who owe him something. Meanwhile, when I lived with them, I was paying rent. Actual rent. I moved back in when I was 26 for a bit, just to stack some money after a rough stretch. I told them I'd chip in, of course. I'm not a leech. First month back, Dad tells me the contribution is $600. I'm like, fine. It's their house. I paid it. The next day, I hear my mom say to Josh, "Don't worry, sweetheart. You focus on yourself." I asked if he was helping out too. She said, "He's not in the same position as you." Right. His position is playing video games and ignoring job applications. Mine was working 50 hours a week and still being treated like I owed them something just for existing. And it wasn't just about money. When Josh crashed my dad's car after taking it without asking, they covered it up like it was a simple mistake. He didn't have a license, lied about where he was going, hit a fence and dented the whole side. I found out because I walked into the garage and saw the damage. They told me not to say anything to the neighbors. I laughed. If that had been me, I'd still be getting lectured today. Hell, I'd probably be on the hook for repairs. But Josh? Nah. They said he was just stressed. Let me give you one more example of how deep the favoritism runs. A couple years ago, I was finally doing well for myself. Got promoted at work, had a few freelance gigs on the side. I was saving, planning for a condo. So I started helping out more. I'd send them grocery money without them asking. Helped fix the AC when it died in July. Paid for my dad's new phone. Didn't ask for anything in return. One weekend I came over to visit. I walk in, and my mom's talking about how Josh has been trying to get into digital media and might need a better setup. She looks at me and says, "Could you help him get a computer?" I asked Josh directly what he needed it for. He shrugs and says, "I just want a decent rig so I can stream." That was it. Not work, not study, just stream. I said no. Mom gave me this disappointed look like I was the one being unreasonable. She said, "You always have something negative to say." What she meant was, "You're not enabling him, so now you're the problem." It all added up over time. I was expected to give, and he was expected to receive. The rules were just different for us. If I was tired from work, I was lazy. If Josh stayed in bed till 2 p.m., he was going through something. Honestly, the worst part wasn't even the money. It was how normal they made it all seem. Like I was the crazy one for noticing. Like I was the ungrateful one. The outsider. And no matter how much I helped out, it never balanced the scales. Not even close. There was this one time I took a week off work to help Dad with something around the house. Some busted plumbing and electrical problems. Spent all week fixing stuff, sweating in a crawl space, doing things they would have paid a stranger thousands to do. I left Sunday night, tired as hell. The next day, Josh posted on social media about how some people just show up for praise but don't actually care. I knew it was about me. He didn't tag me, but I knew. When I brought it up, my mom said, "He didn't mean it that way. Don't start drama." I could feel something shift in me then. Not anger, just attachment. Like whatever rope I'd been using to tie myself to this family had finally frayed and snapped. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until there was nothing left holding me to them. So yeah, that's the background. That's how it always was. I was the one working, the one paying, the one fixing things, and somehow still the one being treated like I wasn't doing enough. Meanwhile, Josh sat on his ass, treated everyone like garbage, and got away with it because he's sensitive. After everything I'd already dealt with, I still gave them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Guilt. Whatever. I was raised to be the bigger man, which in my family just meant take more crap than anyone else and keep paying for it. Anyway, I had moved out again. Got my own place. 1-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy but clean, quiet, and finally mine. I still sent my parents money every now and then. Usually small stuff. Groceries, utilities. The occasional Josh's phone bill is due, and he's going through a rough time again. I never got so much as a thank you. Not once. I was working remotely, getting steady contracts, finally building some savings. I wasn't rich, but I was doing okay. Enough to relax a bit for the first time in years. And even with how they'd treated me, I still made the mistake of thinking, maybe they'll appreciate it eventually. Then came the final straw. It was around March. My lease was ending in June, and I was thinking about house hunting. Nothing big, just a small starter place. I'd been talking to my cousin Jack about it. We were close in age, grew up together. Solid dude. Only one in the whole family who ever told me the truth straight. No fake positivity or guilt trips, just honesty. One night, he texted me, "Hey, you still planning to buy a place? You might want to check your credit report." Weird, but okay. I checked, and I almost threw my phone. There was a new credit card under my name. $6,700 balance. Opened 3 months ago. Maxed out. Late fees piling up. I never opened that card. I never authorized it. My hands were shaking. Guess whose name was listed on the card as an authorized user? Josh. I called the bank, confirmed the address on file. It was my parents' house. They'd used my info, my social, my full name, everything. I was done. I didn't even call them. I drove straight over there. Walked into the house, no knocking. My mom was in the kitchen. She looked up, smiled like nothing was wrong. Me. Where's Josh? Her. In his room. Why? Me. I'm not asking why. I'm telling you, get him out here. She starts panicking. What happened? I said one sentence. He stole my identity and opened a credit card in my name. You know what she said? He didn't steal it. We thought you wouldn't mind. They were all in on it. I just stared at her, like I didn't even recognize her anymore. My own mother. My dad walked in, acting like I'd just interrupted his favorite show. He said, "You're overreacting." Josh finally came out. Looked like he just rolled out of bed. Hair all messed up, wearing some stupid hoodie he probably bought with my money. He had the balls to say, "It's not that serious, bro. You've got a good job." No apology, no shame. I told them all. Right there. I was done. Not just annoyed, not just taking a break. Done. I made them sit there while I called the bank to report it. Reported the fraud. Froze my credit. Told the rep on speaker they stole from me. My mom tried crying. My dad kept muttering, "It's not that deep." I walked out while Josh was still complaining that I ruined his chances at rebuilding his credit. I didn't answer a single call after that. I changed my number. Blocked them all. Even blocked a few aunts and uncles I knew would come poking around asking questions. For a while it was silent, but not for long. About a month later, I started getting calls from random numbers, voicemails, Facebook messages. They were all saying the same crap. Your parents are struggling. Josh is depressed again. Family is family. You can't just disappear. My uncle even said, "Be a man and go fix this." I wanted to laugh. Be a man? I spent most of my adult life cleaning up messes I didn't make. That was being a man. They just didn't like that I finally stopped. They tried to guilt me hard. Said I abandoned the family. Said I owed it to them. Said they raised me. Let me make this clear. They raised a workhorse, not a son. They raised someone they could lean on. Someone they could dump their failures on. Someone who would never say no. Until I finally did. The only person who stood by me was Jack. He told the rest of the family to back off. Said they were lucky I didn't press charges. He even offered to help me sue, but I didn't want to drag it out. I just wanted to be free. And I was. Finally, I closed that fraud case, recovered my credit, landed a new job a few months later, way better pay, better hours, full benefits. Moved into a house last fall. 3 bedrooms, clean garage, small yard. Nothing crazy, just mine. And then came the moment that made everything worth it. About a week after I moved in, I got a knock at the door. Middle of the day. I opened it and saw Josh standing there. Same hoodie, same loser attitude. He said, "I heard you got a place." I didn't say anything. He goes, "Mom and Dad are going to lose the house. Can we stay here for a while?" I looked him dead in the face. Number. And then I shut the door. Not slammed, just closed. Calm. Simple. And that was it. No yelling. No fight. Just the door closing on a guy who thought he could steal from me, lie to me, and still get a handout. That moment, that's the one I waited for my whole life. After I slammed the door on Josh, I stood there for maybe 5 seconds. No yelling. No knocking. Nothing. He didn't try again. I think he got it. For once in his life, he didn't get his way, and there wasn't anyone around to twist it into sympathy for him. I didn't hear from them again for a while. They probably expected me to feel bad. That's always how it went. They'd pull something messed up, and then somehow I'd be the one apologizing. This time, I didn't call. I didn't unblock them. I didn't tell myself it was just family stuff, because it wasn't. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did for them. Rent money, groceries, phone bills, gas, repairs, gifts for holidays, bragging rights. I was the kid they could point to when they wanted to pretend they raised someone right. Meanwhile, I was never allowed to say no. Not once. It's funny how quiet things get when people realize they can't guilt you anymore. But the silence didn't last long. 3 months later, Jack and I grabbed dinner at this small burger spot we both liked. I hadn't seen him in person since the credit card mess, but we kept in touch. He never judged me, just listened, gave his thoughts when I asked, and stayed out of the family drama. He always told me I should have cut them off years ago, but he never said, "I told you so." We sat down, and he gave me a heads up. "Jack, so just so you know, your mom's been talking to my mom." Me. "Yeah? What now?" Jack. "Same old crap. She says Josh is having a hard time, says they might have to sell the house. They're trying to make it sound like you're abandoning them." I nodded. I wasn't even surprised. Jack said his mom didn't buy into it, but other relatives might. And he was right. That same week, I started getting random texts from family I hadn't spoken to in years. One said, "You need to step up. They're your parents." Another said, whatever they did, family is family. A one guy I didn't even know well said, he's your brother. You're older. Be a man. I blocked every single number. Let's get one thing straight. I wasn't punishing anyone. I just stopped volunteering to be used. They had chances, years of them, and they made their choice every single time. Josh got defended. I got told to grow up. He got excuses. I got responsibilities. So yeah, I wasn't helping anymore. And they didn't like that. Things escalated when they realized the door wasn't going to reopen. My mom went full campaign mode. She started messaging friends of mine on Facebook, even a couple coworkers. Told them she was worried about me. Said I was being manipulated by Jack. Said Jack was jealous of our family closeness. What closeness? Jack showed me the screenshots. One of the messages literally said, we raised our son right, but Jack is turning him cold. He laughed when he showed me. I didn't. I was done being mad, but it still felt disgusting seeing my own mom talk about me like I was someone else's problem to fix. After that, I posted one final thing on my socials before I deactivated everything. Just to be clear, I'm doing fine. I live alone. I pay for everything myself. I don't steal, lie, or take advantage of people. If anyone's telling you I've changed, it's probably because I stopped letting them do those things to me. That was it. I disappeared from online after that. Deleted Facebook. Locked down everything else. They couldn't reach me directly anymore, so they started leaning on Jack. He told me they showed up at his mom's house. Twice. Asked if he could just pass a message or help smooth things over. Jack said no. Straight to their faces. He told my dad, you didn't lose your son. You lost your ATM. I never asked him to say that. He just did. Jack always had a way of cutting through nonsense. I didn't think they could sink lower after the fraud, but they weren't done. Around 6 months after I cut them off, I got a letter in the mail. Real one. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was my mom's. The letter was 3 pages long. It started like a fake apology, then turned into a full-on guilt trip. She talked about how parents aren't perfect and how forgiveness is part of growing up. Said she was disappointed that I was letting money come between us. Then, the last paragraph hit different. If you're going to pretend you don't have a family, then don't be surprised when we leave you out of important things. You'll regret missing weddings, babies, funerals. That's what happens when you turn your back. That's when it finally clicked. They didn't want peace. They wanted leverage. The family talk was just a tool to get back what I took away. Access to my wallet and my time. I didn't reply. The only reason I even kept that letter was to remind myself how far they were willing to go. But life got better after that. I got a promotion. I fixed up the house. I started working out again. Not for looks, just to feel solid. Jack and I started working on a side business. Simple online stuff, but it's growing. I even took a short vacation. First one in years. No one calling. No one asking for favors. Just silence. And it felt good. The last time I saw Josh was the day I shut the door on him. The last time I spoke to my parents was when they stood in their kitchen defending identity theft. I don't know where they are now. I don't care. They had a son. They chose to use him. And now, they don't get to say they raised a good man because they didn't. I built myself. Jack had my back. That was more family than I ever got from them. A few months after I blocked them out, life was finally quiet. I was working steady, sleeping better, eating real food instead of cheap fast stuff. No constant phone calls. No guilt texts. Jack and I were even putting real hours into our side project. Then I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but this one had a local area code, and I figured it might be work-related. It wasn't. It was my old high school buddy, Sam. We hadn't talked in years, but I always liked the guy. Solid dude, never into drama. The call started normal, but then he said something that made my stomach tighten. Sam. Hey man, random question. Was your brother ever dating a girl named Lena back in the day? I said yeah. Josh dated Lena during senior year. Why? He sighed. Sam, you need to hear this. Back when we were all teenagers, Lena had a rough time at home. Bad stepdad. Mom who didn't care. She was quiet, kept to herself. Dated Josh for a bit, but it didn't last long. Turns out something happened back then, and it was covered up. Josh had gotten her pregnant. I didn't know. No one did. She was 17. He was 18. According to Sam, she didn't tell anyone at first, just disappeared for a few weeks. Sam said one day he ran into her downtown, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. He bought her lunch and they talked. That's when she told him. She was scared, didn't know what to do, but she had told Josh. What did he do? He told her it wasn't his, blocked her. laughed in her face, called her names, said she was trying to trap him. And here's the worst part. My parents found out. Instead of helping, they paid her off to shut up. Sam swore he saw my dad handing an envelope to Lena behind the rec center. She was crying, and my mom was in the car looking straight ahead like it wasn't even happening. I didn't want to believe it. I asked Jack. He didn't know either, but he offered to help me find out. I started digging. A few calls, old social media, some messages. Took about 2 weeks, but we found her. Lena still lived in the area, not far from where we grew up. She agreed to meet for coffee. I didn't bring Jack, didn't record anything, didn't try to catch her. I just wanted the truth. And she gave it to me. Yes, she had gotten pregnant by Josh. She told him. He denied it. Then 2 days later, my mom and dad showed up at her apartment. They didn't yell. They didn't threaten. They just made it clear. This baby wasn't going to ruin Josh's future. They gave her cash. Told her she had options. And that if she ever told anyone, she'd be painted as a liar and a gold digger. Small town stuff. Easy to destroy a girl's name. She took the money. She left town. She had the baby. Josh has a daughter. And no one knows. No child support. No visits. No calls. Nothing. I asked Lena what she wanted from me. She said nothing. Just closure. She said, I always knew you weren't like them. I didn't sleep that night. This wasn't some family argument. This wasn't favoritism. This was evil. They erased a kid, lied to everyone, paid off a scared girl to protect their golden boy, all while acting like they were this wholesome, perfect family. Meanwhile, they were dumping guilt and rent and bills on me while protecting a guy who made a kid and walked away. And they didn't feel bad about it. They just buried it. That's when I stopped thinking about peace. I started thinking about payback. I didn't scream. I didn't post anything online. I made a plan. I called a lawyer. Not to sue them, yet, but to understand my options. I wasn't on any paperwork tied to Lena's kid, but I could vouch for her, and I could help her take it legal if she ever wanted to force a paternity test. My lawyer explained that Josh could be on the hook for years of unpaid support. That's step 1. Step 2 was reputation. My parents love pretending they're this generous, selfless couple. They go to every church event, community cookouts. They love being pillars of the neighborhood. So I talked to Lena again. She gave me permission to share her story, with proof. Photos, messages from back then, a copy of the original money order they gave her. She kept it all. I printed it, wrote a clean timeline, and mailed it anonymously to every board member at their church, every neighborhood Facebook group, and the local school council, where my mom volunteers. Jack helped me distribute it. He even got the church bulletin lady to sneak a copy into the donation envelopes. They didn't know what hit them. By the end of that month, Josh lost his job. He worked under a guy whose wife got the letter. My mom was removed from the school committee, pending review. My dad? Someone keyed his car and left a note taped to the windshield. Pay for the kid your son left behind. They knew it was me. I didn't hide. I sent them a text for the first time in over a year. This is just the start. I'm not done. They never replied. Now I'm helping Lena quietly get legal steps started. She doesn't want money. She wants Josh to own it, to show up, to explain to that kid why he vanished. He won't, but we're going to make him try. This is the first time I've ever felt in control. They made me the outsider. Now I'm making sure the outside sees exactly who they are, and I'm not even close to finished. After the truth about Josh's kid started spreading, it didn't take long for my parents to hit full damage control mode. They went radio silent for a while, which was weird in itself. I figured they were regrouping. I was right. About a month later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email. A formal letter with a printed header from my dad's business and everything, like they were trying to make it look official. Inside, they asked, no, demanded, that I cease all attempts to sabotage the family's reputation and take responsibility for the damage caused. My mom even included a line about how I owe them for years of shelter, food, and support. It was the most delusional thing I've ever read. Keep in mind, this is after I found out they covered up a pregnancy to protect Josh. After they let me carry their bills for years. After they made me pay rent as a teen while he lived there for free, crashed cars, never worked, and got treated like royalty. And now, somehow, I'm the problem. Jack took one look at the letter and just said, let them sue. They'll lose. But I knew they weren't serious about legal action. That letter was a scare tactic. An attempt to guilt me back into line. Classic move from them. They didn't care about the truth getting out. They cared about losing control over how people saw them. So I ignored it. And that's when the phone calls started again. First from relatives. Uncles, cousins, People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly acting all concerned. I could tell exactly where they were getting their info from. One cousin even said, "Your mom says you're spreading lies because you're jealous of Josh's success." I almost laughed out loud. Success? The guy was jobless, sleeping in the same room he had at 16, and still asking for money to start a business that doesn't exist. Then came the guilt trips. They took you in when no one else would. You're acting like they never helped you. You're ruining your family over a mistake Josh made as a teenager. Mistake? They helped him hide a child? But no one wanted to hear that part. They wanted me to be the villain, the ungrateful son. It made their version easier to swallow. Then my dad showed up at my apartment. Didn't call, didn't text, just rang the bell and stood there like I was supposed to drop everything. I opened the door, didn't say a word. He starts in with the whole, "We need to talk" routine. I just leaned on the frame and let him go. He said the family's name was being dragged through the dirt, that his clients were pulling out, that my actions were causing real damage. He even tried to throw Josh under the bus a little, saying he made a mistake, but they had to protect him because he wasn't ready to be a father. I asked him, "So you decided it was better to pay off the girl and pretend the kid didn't exist?" He didn't answer that. Then he dropped the real reason for his visit. He needed money. After all that, after years of being used, after they turned the entire family against me, after they backed a deadbeat son who abandoned his kid and lied about it, they came to me for help, said he needed a temporary loan to keep the business afloat, promised to pay it back with interest, acted like I should be proud to support the family legacy. That's when I lost it. I told him the truth, with no filter. "You made your bed with Josh. Now sleep in it. Don't come to the son you treated like a tenant and beg for cash. You picked your golden boy. Go ask him." He tried to guilt me again. Said, "No matter what, we're still family." I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "No, you're just people I used to know." Then I closed the door. He stood there for a minute, then left. No yelling, no drama, just silence. But I knew that wasn't the end. The next week, they took it to Facebook. Yeah, grown adults airing it out online like teenagers. My mom posted a long status about how some people forget who raised them, and when you feed a snake, it still bites. Stuff like that. Comments rolled in. Some people backed her, others tagged me. I didn't respond. I let people talk. And meanwhile, Jack and I kept helping Lena prepare legal action. We'd already talked to a family law attorney. Josh would be served soon. She wanted full custody. She already had it. But also retroactive child support. That's tens of thousands. Josh didn't know it was coming. Neither did my parents. But they would. Soon. This chapter of my life, it's not about reconnecting. It's not about healing. It's about making things right for the people they tried to screw over. And I'm not doing it with shouting or social media. I'm doing it with cold, legal, public consequences. Let them see what happens when the kid they underestimated finally stops playing nice. It finally happened. Josh got served. He was still living at home, obviously. The guy had no job, no real bills, and hadn't made a single effort to move out. So when the process server showed up, it was at my parents' front door. My mom tried to argue with the guy, as if she could block a legal document from being handed over, but the server wasn't having it. Left it right in Josh's hands and walked away. Lena's name was right there, along with the demand for retroactive child support and a paternity test. Jack told me later, because he still had a friend in the neighborhood, Josh apparently threw the paperwork on the ground and started yelling that it was fake. My dad picked it up and said they'd get their attorney involved. Sure, these are the same people who thought a Facebook post would fix their public image. Anyway, I didn't hear anything from them directly. Not for 2 weeks. Then came the letter. Another printed envelope, this time from a law firm in town I actually recognized. I opened it, expecting a threat. It was worse. They were trying to sue me. The letter accused me of public defamation, malicious interference with family stability, and intentionally weaponizing private matters for social retaliation. All nonsense. Nothing illegal, nothing provable. But it showed me something more important. They weren't in damage control anymore. They were desperate. I called my lawyer. He laughed. "This isn't even real legal ground," he said. "They're trying to intimidate you." So I told him I wanted to hit back. Not emotionally, not online, legally. He helped me draft a response. We stated that I had never publicly named anyone, never posted anything, never committed defamation, that everything I shared privately was based on documented facts and first-hand accounts, with the subject's permission. And then I added a paragraph at the end. Given the family's own history of financial exploitation, selective financial support, and confirmed emotional mistreatment, Any public trial would only further expose their misconduct. That was a warning shot. They never replied. Then came Josh's paternity results. Positive. No surprise there. What did surprise me was how fast Lena's attorney moved. She filed for back child support immediately. Her case was solid. Years of evidence showing he'd known, denied, and avoided responsibility. My parents' hush money stunt even strengthened it. Josh was now on the hook of unpaid support, plus future payments. We're talking thousands per month. And guess who they tried to make pay? Me. My mom had the nerve to send me a voicemail, crying, saying I was destroying the family financially, and that I needed to take responsibility for what I started. She said Josh was too mentally fragile to deal with all this stress, and that I needed to help keep this family together. No joke, she even said, "You make the most money. It's only fair you carry the burden." Fair? I carried everything while Josh got babied and praised for doing nothing. And now they wanted me to pay for his kid. I didn't even respond. Jack heard the voicemail too, and just stared at the wall for like 10 seconds before saying, "That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Here's where things started flipping for good. Remember those people who originally backed my parents online? Relatives, family friends, old neighbors? They started seeing through it. People were hearing about Josh's kid, the support order, the cover-up, and they were connecting the dots. Aunt Layla, who was always close to my mom, called me out of nowhere. She said, "I didn't believe it at first, but it's all true, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah." She apologized. Said she should have seen it years ago, that I was always the one working, helping, supporting. Josh was always lounging, using, burning bridges. That call was the first of many. By the end of the month, about half the extended family had either messaged me privately or cut off my parents completely. Even my uncle, my mom's brother, told her to get help and stop blaming the wrong son. That one really hit her. She posted a crying selfie on Facebook the next day. Meanwhile, Lena's case kept moving. Her lawyer wasn't messing around. The court ordered Josh to start payments immediately. They also scheduled a hearing for parental responsibility violations, because Lena submitted a statement showing how Josh had avoided involvement for over a decade, with help from his parents. Translation: my mom and dad might be dragged in too. They went from smug and untouchable to scared and exposed in less than 3 months. One day, Jack and I were sitting on my porch. We'd just finished up a meeting with a supplier for our side business. Things were going well, calm, quiet. Then I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo, a moving truck, in front of my parents' house. The message just said, "They're selling. Can't keep up anymore." I didn't even smile. I just nodded. They finally hit rock bottom. The house they protected so much, where they let Josh freeload and treated me like an unwanted tenant, was gone. The reputation they bragged about at every community dinner? Gone. Josh's future? Tied to child support and legal records now? And me? I was free. I had my business. I had people who respected me. I had peace. And most importantly, I had the receipts. All of it. Saved, documented, ready, if they ever tried anything again. So after the house got sold, they moved into a much smaller place in an older part of town. Same area, different status. No more big backyard, no more 2-car garage. Just a tiny duplex that didn't even have proper heating. They didn't tell anyone. Someone from the old neighborhood spotted them unloading the truck and sent me a photo. Turns out they weren't just broke. They were in debt. Bad debt. My dad's business folded. Some of his clients backed out once they heard about the lawsuit, and he never adapted. Still tried to run it like it was 2003. My mom had been using credit cards to cover bills behind his back, and once the payments dried up, everything defaulted. Credit score tanked, bills piled up. They were borrowing from relatives who already knew they were liars. So yeah, things were falling apart. And Josh? He was worse. Josh still had no job. That child support order kicked in hard, right out of the little savings he had. Lena's lawyer was ruthless with enforcement, garnished every account he touched. Any gig he tried to pick up under the table got flagged. He was even denied a passport when he tried to claim he had a job opportunity abroad. That was a lie, of course. He started calling old friends asking for help. Most of them ignored him. The ones who didn't gave him maybe $50 here or there, then blocked him when he kept asking. Then he tried to call me. Didn't even have the guts to text first. Straight up called me like we were cool. I didn't answer. So he left a voicemail. Sounded tired. Said he never meant for things to go this far. That he felt like everyone turned on him. And that he was just trying to survive. No apology. No owning what he did. Just excuses. He ended the message with, "You win, okay? Are you happy now?" I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. This wasn't about winning. It was about finally watching them live the life they made for themselves. The last time I saw my parents was about 4 months after they sold the house. I was walking out of a hardware store. Just picked up supplies for the new office space. Their car was parked near the sidewalk. They saw me this time. My mom opened the door and called out, "Wait! Please just wait." I didn't stop, but they caught up. She looked rough, tired, shaky. My dad looked smaller than I remembered. He wasn't wearing his usual smug expression, just quiet. "We just want to talk," my mom said. "We're sorry. We were wrong. Josh has ruined everything, and we see that now." She started crying. My dad didn't say a word, just stood there behind her. "We need help," she said. "We're not asking for much, just something to get us through." I looked them both in the eye. No anger, no shouting, just said, "No." That was it. My mom blinked like she didn't hear me right. "Please, we're your parents." I shrugged. "You weren't when it counted," and I walked away.